with the first pick.
Thunderstruck! Thunderstruck! Yeah, Thunderstruck!
Welcome into the Fantasy Rant podcast. I am Dan Baker, accompanied by my co-hosts Evan Gooding and Mason Beck. Football is back, baby. Let's go. Week 1 is in the books. We got the Week 1 review coming up, the Week 2 preview coming up. So we got a loaded show for you guys today. But before we dive into all of that, we got the question of the day, and it's a good one coming from Evan.
Yeah,
you guys know the answer. Put it up in the comments. If you have the first correct answer, we will put you up in the chat. Evan, you're going to need to stay on top of that because I don't know the answer this time.
Yes, this is true. So this is the question. Who has the most receptions on their first NFL debut? Now, we are going to give – you guys are lucky this week. We're giving you 2 hints. So number 1, he played the past 5 seasons in the NFL for 2 different teams. And the second hint, he was just released 16 days ago and is currently a free agent. But he had the most receptions in NFL history in their NFL debut.
It's bothering me that I don't know it based off those 2 hints. I'm going to try not to yell out any answers that might come to mind mid-show. All right, but that being said, before we start off with the Week 1 preview, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone tuning into the Stadium Rant Original. If you like our content, subscribe to our free newsletter. It includes exclusive interviews, articles of the week, discounts on Stadium Rant merch, and much more. You can sign up at StadiumRant.com. All right, let's get straight into it, boys. We got the first game of the week debuting with the Detroit Lions against the Kansas City Chiefs. This game ended up with Detroit winning by a point. Game stayed in a pretty neutral game script all day long. It was a fun battle to watch. I'm happy to see KC 0-1. I know, Evan, as a Chargers fan, you're happy to see the same thing. Nothing better than seeing the Super Bowl champ starting off 0-1. All right. So some notes from the game. The Chiefs need Travis Kelce. It's going to be impossible to trade for Travis Kelce, but if you can't, send out an offer, see what you can get. When he comes back, there is no way he is not leaned on like no other. Really, right now, there's no lead wide receiver 1. We had Sky Moore leading in snaps. Marcus Valdez-Scantling leading in routes run, just barely over Sky Moore. But really none of these players produced. And then a big talk of the day, Mason, get ready for that. Kadarius Toney, 5 targets, 1 reception, -1 yards, 2 drops, one of them going for a pick 6 that really changed the momentum of the game. And altogether, there's a lot of negative talk surrounding Toney. Mason, how do you feel about your KC wide receiver 1 this year?
Well, after watching that game, my first kind of thought is, oh God, why did I say Toney was going to be their number 1? Just the way he played. They tried at the goal line to get him in a couple times, I believe. Didn't get through, and those are really what I was kind of banking off for Toney. And then I don't think Mahomes is going to trust him down the field at all anymore. That pick 6 was terrible. There's a couple other drops. Everything went wrong for Toney. I'm honestly on the verge of cutting him on some teams just because I'm so angry of how bad he did.
Redraft or dynasty?
Redraft.
Right. I was going to say, I'd still hold on.
No, I'm still keeping him in dynasty. Yeah.
Got to keep him. But, I will say some of the positives for Toney. Hard to pull some positives from this game, but he only ran 11 routes, and on those 11 routes, he was targeted 5 times. So they clearly want to get him the ball. And Andy Reid does have a habit of taking players who've had rough games and then making them a focus the next week. Generally speaking, he wants his players not to dwell in the bad. He wants them to get ramped back up to where he knows they can be. So I do think that Toney will see his stock rise from the low points it is right now. That being said, I agree with you. I wouldn't roster him on any redraft teams. not worth the bench spot, especially with all of these wide receivers and running backs available to grab. We do have a waiver wire episode. I know it's past waivers, but if you want to check out some guys to grab that might still be in the free agent pool for your league, go check that out. It's on the YouTube channel. All right.
Quick intermission there, though. Hey, guys,
Yes,
question
sir.
for the group. Who out of all three of our picks had the most receiving yards out of that Kansas City room?
Oh, yeah. Justin Ross with
Let's
a whole
go.
60
Justin
yards.
Ross, baby.
A
Justin
whole
Ross.
60 yards.
Stack it up.
Oh,
All
my
right,
goodness.
all right.
What a
I'll take the
beast
week
he
one
is.
W. I'll take the week one W from the two of you guys, you know. It's
I'm giving you 2 for that because he did not deserve to be brought up that time. You get 2. We're up to 20 mentions of Justin Ross, and we're in week 1, baby. All right. So another couple notes from the Chiefs side of the ball. Pacheco's definitely the lead back. He had 14 rushing attempts, 14 touches.
I'm
No,
not sure. Yeah, there we go.
that's not correct. Yeah, that's not correct. I think it was 14 opportunities. He had 12 touches, a little bit more involved in the passing game than we
he
might
had
have thought.
eight carries for 23 yards confirmed.
Okay, nice. Yeah, and okay, yep. 12 opportunities, 12 touches, a little bit more involved in the passing game than we might have thought. Jerick McKinnon, no rushing attempts on the ground. Jerick McKinnon really didn't see that many snaps. CEH, he got out to an early start, taking the bulk of the carries on the first drive. After that, he kind of disappeared as well. Definitely Pacheco's the back to roster. I think there is a small buy low window on him right now. The Chiefs are going to perform. He's going to get his touches inside the red zone. He is a little bit boomer bust and touchdown dependent, but I think that there's a small window here in redraft leagues to buy low on Pacheco. On the other side of the ball, we had Gibbs was looking amazing. They talked about him being eased into the offense. I don't think anybody was quite expecting this split in the touches. Gibbs had 7 rushing attempts. Montgomery had 21 rushing attempts. On those 7 attempts, though, Gibbs broke 6 tackles. He also averaged 4.86 yards after contact. I think everybody who drafted Gibbs and watched the first game of the NFL season, which is pretty much everybody, saw the talent, probably not going to sell him. In case you have a lackadaisical manager that has Gibbs on their roster, though, try and go and get him. Another potential buy low candidate. I think we're all waiting for that breakout. And then still staying on the running backs, both of them, Montgomery and Gibbs, only had 2 targets in the game. Look for that to increase over time. They talked nonstop over the offseason about targeting these running backs. I do think they're going to see their targets and receptions increase. The 2 targets for both of them is way too low. Moving on to the wide receivers, everybody knows Amon-Ra St. Brown's that dude. He's going to remain that dude, especially while Jameson Williams is out of the lineup. But for the meantime, Josh Reynolds, he had 4 receptions for 80 yards. I think he is a potential pickup. I think he's still available in the majority of leagues. I picked him up in a couple of leagues as a stash for the most part. And we'll touch on this later, but the Lions got the Seahawks coming up. I'm expecting Reek Woolen to be on Amon-Ra while he isn't in the slot. And then Josh Reynolds also had the second most routes run from the slot. So I do expect him to be freed up from Woolen and Michael Jackson. I think that he could have a big week 2. All right. Moving on to our next game, we got Houston at Baltimore. Baltimore pretty handily won this game. There's been a lot of talks about them increasing the passing volume. They didn't need passing volume in week 1. They only threw the ball 22 times while they rushed the ball 32 times. That being said, Houston gave up a historically bad amount of rushing yards last season. I believe it was in the bottom 10 in the last decade in terms of yards given up per game. So that's what they did. They pounded the ball on the ground. But outside of the rushing game, I mean, all right, let's stay on the rushing game for a minute. We know about the J.K. Dobbins news. This sucks. The guy looked good. He looked good in the snaps that he had. I do think he was on way for a huge fantasy day. He got injured right on the goal line where Justice Hill came in for the next snap, took the touchdown. But J.K. Dobbins with the Achilles tear, I mean, obviously, done. His career might be over. It saddens me to say he is only 24 years old right now, but in dynasty leagues, I am a JK manager in a dynasty league. I'm personally going to wait until this next off season, and then I'm going to try to ship him if there's any positive news. But what do you guys think about J.K. Dobbins' dynasty value moving forward?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to get a whole lot for him, especially given the injury. I'd almost even try to wait for him to hear news to come back first. You know what I mean? Wait to hear some news, some positive news on that side. So that you might even be holding him for a while, and which I think he's still super talented. Though I think he could have a resurgence, and I think that there's people that would believe that as well. So I think that you could get a trade out.
Yeah, it's really, really unfortunate. Mason, what are you thinking about J.K. Dobbins' dynasty?
I mean, I think this mostly kills it a lot. I mean, he is talented, and I do think he will get another shot somewhere, but I don't think he has that lead back role. I don't think teams are going to go into the season thinking, "Oh, J.K. Dobbins is going to be our guy all season." His injuries have killed that for him. I think this might have been the last time we ever see him where he's going to be an RB1 role. And yeah, I don't think his value will ever be what it is. And honestly, I got to comment one thing real quick. I'm picking up Fournette and Hunt in a couple leagues because I think one of them is going to be going to Baltimore.
That is interesting because they promoted Gordon from the practice squad. They got Gus there. They have Justice Hill. I personally think Gus Edwards is the back to own in that backfield. He's averaged over 5 yards per carry throughout his career. Not many running backs can say that. Last year, he had 3.48 yards after contact, which was 8th amongst qualifying running backs in the league. The guy is great on the ground. Downside, he doesn't catch the ball. Doesn't catch the ball at all. That work will likely go to Hill and Gordon if they don't bring in anyone else. So he is going to have a limited upside. He's going to have a low floor. But I think that the Ravens is a solid offense. And I do think that he has opportunity to get maybe 8 to 10 rushing touchdowns, depending on how the cards fall. In other news, we have Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers looked like that dude.
I love that.
There was 22 pass attempts by Lamar Jackson. 10 of those targets went to Zay Flowers. Caught 9 of them for 78 yards. He's not that downfield guy right now, but he's not getting tackled by the first defender. He is too quick, too agile. He's got that shake. I really think that Zay Flowers is a good trade target, even with Mark Andrews starting to practice again. I think that he's going to show himself as the wide receiver one on this team. And it already looks like he's got the clear wide receiver one role. With Mark Andrews out, he had the 10 targets. Odell had 3. Bateman had 3. He ran much more routes than Bateman, and I'm not too concerned about Beckham. So I think that Flowers, don't go and try to trade for him right now. But if you have him in your lineup, go ahead and feel free to start him as a wide receiver 3 or flex play at the bare minimum.
Honestly, Zay Flowers is probably the first Ravens wide receiver that I've been feeling pretty confident in. Since Lamar's been there, I feel like confidence is finally there for a guy that I think Lamar can really rely on, and he's going to rely on, and it's going to be a good fantasy start.
Right. And one of the things we harped on. Sorry, go ahead, Evan.
I was just saying he's so shifty too, and it just didn't. Every time he caught the ball, it didn't look like there was anybody close to him.
Completely agreed. He looked like the stud they drafted him to be. And one of the things we harped on in the offseason, Lamar Jackson's mobility and ability to extend plays, along with Zay Flowers. How are you guarding Zay Flowers in a scramble drill? no one's staying with that guy if it's longer than 3 seconds, you know? So as long as he has the smarts to find the open spots in the field, I think he is going to continue to produce. And he's going to eventually get one of these broken plays where we see linebacker secondary starting to converge on Jackson as he's scrambling out. He's going to dump it off to Flowers and he's gone. So I'm looking forward to that combo from a fantasy standpoint. As a Browns fan, that freaking sucks. This dude's good. I don't know who's going to guard him, but, we'll find out. That's a good segue. We got the next game is the Bengals and the Browns. This was a rain game, so a lot of things were heavily affected by that rain. We had Joe Burrow putting up, what was it, 2.5 points, 3 points, something like that on the day. Threw 31 times, completed 14 of those passes for 82 yards, no touchdowns, no sacks, or no interceptions. The Browns, they controlled the game from the get-go, so they were running the ball nonstop. We had Chubb with over 100 yards. Watson looked better than last year. He was also affected by the rain. So we definitely saw some bad misses as well, but that was coming from both sides of the ball. So with the rain affecting the game, T. Higgins, I know, Evan, you want to talk about this. T. Higgins, 8 targets.
8 targets. Couldn't catch a single one of them. Couldn't catch a single one of them. Not a single one.
I'm never going to hear the end of this.
No. And it's going to continue the rest of the season. So get ready for just constant.
I think
occasional jabs throughout the season as he drops those dud games.
Most likely someone like Evan isn't rostering T. Higgins, but just in case they are, go send a buy low trade offer for T. Higgins. I also think Amari Cooper is a good buy low right now. Both of them were affected by the rain. The guy rostering them might not have watched the game. They might just look at the box score. Go take a shot and see if you can acquire them on the low. They're definitely going to produce more than they did in week 1. But yeah, Watson looked better. For Cleveland, we had Jack Conklin go down. So with the right tackle, an all-pro at one point going down, I do think that he will affect the running game. But we did bring in another veteran, and we have DeJuan Jones. So that could improve over time. Obviously, we're still feeling comfortable with Nick Chubb as an RB1. All right, moving on to the next one. We got this was an interesting game to watch. It was the Buccaneers at the Vikings. Neutral game script the whole way through. A few turnovers really affected this game. Buccaneers ended up coming back to win it. But we had Justin Jefferson with over 100 yards in the first half. He was making everybody know, I'm not JT. I am worth your 101. He looked the part. After that, we had Addison running 31 routes behind him and KJ running 44 routes. Looks like KJ still has a tiny stranglehold on the we got to backtrack to Houston. Did I miss Houston?
You did miss Houston. We did miss Houston, I think.
Whoops. All right, guys.
Hey, this is our first in the regular season. We gotta make sure.
First one regular season. We got some bumps and bruises. I'll touch on it really quick. We had both Dameon Pierce and Mike Boone with 25 snaps on passing down specifically. Pierce's upside is going to be limited as long as they're deciding to split passing work between the two of them. Pierce is also going to be limited by the negative game script that Houston's constantly in. We saw them. They hung around for a short amount of time, but the Ravens quickly took the lead. After that, Dameon Pierce's rushing attempts went down. Nico Collins was looking good, 11 targets. I believe it was over 80 yards. I would definitely consider picking him up if he's still around. I do think that Nico is going to be the wide receiver to own. We got Robert Woods also with 10 targets, 6 catches. I believe I exited out of the game, but I believe it is somewhere in 60 yards. I think that Woods, if you want to pick him up on the cheap, he can be a back-end stash. not somebody you need to roster moving forward, but he should have plenty of opportunity. That being said, he's facing the Colts in week 2. They have a solid slot corner in Kenny Moore. That's really their only solid cornerback. I wouldn't start Robert Woods in week 2, but I would consider starting Nico Collins since he operates from the outside. So there's Houston in a nutshell. Thank you for catching my slip up there. Going back to the Bucks and the Vikings here.
I have a quick question about Houston, though.
Yeah,
I just want to know what you guys thought of Stroud's Week 1 performance.
Oof, bad. It did not look sharp.
I didn't think it was the worst. I didn't think it was. It didn't. He didn't look good, but it wasn't absolutely off. It wasn't like the worst we've seen. You know. I don't
think he had any turnovers, which was good to see.
Yeah.
Took care of the ball at least, but we're gonna need some miracles for the Texans to be pulling out these games. I would like to see them take more shots downfield. They don't really have the personnel to do that outside of Nico Collins. I also saw reports that Tank Dell is going to start to get more snaps. That was coming straight from D'Amico Ryans. Also worth monitoring. Don't think he's worth the ad quite yet.
Oh, I do.
But Tank Dell is going to be one of the better wide receivers that's running these short routes. Looks like they're going to be passing the ball in those short to intermediate routes a lot. So I do think that Tank could get anywhere between 6 to 8 targets, even in just week 2 here coming up. So
I agree. I think he is going to have a lot more fantasy relevance early on too.
Mason, what do you think about CJ Stroud?
I mean, could have been worse. I think it was around where I was kind of expecting him. I don't think Stroud is really going to have much fantasy value year 1. Year 2 might be where you actually start playing him in QB1 league or 1 QB leagues. But yeah, if you're in a 1 QB league, Stroud should not be starting on your roster all year long.
For sure.
Agreed.
For sure. Yeah, I had a dynasty rookie draft pretty recently here. I only had Justin Fields as my starting quarterback. Had the 101, 104, and 107. Stroud dropped all the way to the 107. Very happy having him as a project as a QB3, but I am not looking to start him even in 2 QB leagues, super flex leagues. So we need to see it first. We need to see it first, and we need to know that he's got a couple of options outside of just Nico Collins. All right. We good? Can I get to the Bucks game?
Do the Bucks. Do the Bucks.
My bad.
Baker.
Right. So yeah, man, Baker looked all right. This was also another neutral game script. The Vikings blew it due to the turnovers again, but Baker played well. The Vikings defense is pretty cake this season. Not a lot of guys that are going to stop you there. I do think that Mike Evans is a sell high candidate personally with the touchdown. I think that this offense, even though they are incredibly inefficient on the ground, I don't think that Baker's going to be able to support 2 top 24 wide receivers. And I personally think that Godwin is the wide receiver to own on that roster. I would love to be proven wrong. As a Browns fan, I do still cheer for Baker. We did him dirty, so I hope he has success. That being said, I've watched enough of him to know that it's probably not coming. So, I do think Godwin's the guy to own. And moving forward, really nothing else beyond Godwin, in my opinion. K. Dotton, he's on the field a lot. He's not that athlete that's going to turn 3 to 5 receptions into big plays. There's no true wide receiver 3 on that team. Rachaad White didn't even really see too much work in the backfield. Their passing downs was split pretty evenly between White and Tucker. Both got 2 targets and 2 receptions. So until we see otherwise, I'm sitting Rachaad White. What do you guys think about Rachaad?
I still got hope for him. I do, Sean Tucker is creeping. He's creeping. He's lurking.
I do love me some
Sean Tucker. I love me some Sean Tucker. But I think that was more of just like, game scripts, just not really the type of game script for him, or maybe just, I don't know. I'm hoping it was just like an off game for him, because I do actually have a lot of high hopes for him later on in the season. So.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of White shares, and I really hope that he picks it up. It was a slow pretty sloppy week 1 because it was 17 carries, I think, like 39 yards. That's a lot of carries to be putting under 50 yards. And with only getting 2 receptions for 10 yards, I think it was. It's not something you want to see out of like really a guy that we thought would be, not complete workhorse, but the more workhorse running back of that team. And
right.
And
People, sorry, go ahead.
It's something that is a little worrying that if he has another bad week or two like this, is he gonna even get that volume anymore?
Right. Yeah. I mean, people bought in on Rachaad White because of the volume, but if he gets 19 touches and only has 49 yards total from those 2 touches, is volume going to matter that much? And this is against, again, easy Vikings defense. So if he's only putting up these kind of numbers against the Vikings, we know when he runs into tougher defenses, it's not looking good. I do think that Sean Tucker is about as talented and well-rounded as Rachaad White, and will continue to see his snaps and volume increase. Still not to the point where I'm looking to roster him, but definitely a guy to watch moving forward.
Yep.
Moving on to the Vikings, they threw the ball 44 times while only rushing the ball 17 times. Last year, they were top 3 in passing percentage. I'm looking for them to be at least top 5 again this season. Addison looks to be the wide receiver 3 right now. He ran 13 less routes than KJ. Both had 6 targets. Addison was used on the perimeter a little bit more, while KJ ran 46.7% of his routes from the slot. That can be valuable from time to time. But with TJ Hawkinson getting, 9 targets, I believe? Yeah, 9 targets for TJ Hawk. And no, Mason's eating that up. Your tight end 1 in Dynasty. So I do think that KJ will slowly slip into irrelevance while Addison continues to see more and more snaps. I'm comfortable starting Addison this week even. We'll touch on the preview for the Vikings game later on in the show. But right now, Addison's not going anywhere, and he's going to continue to see more and more volume.
Yeah.
All right. Next game we got up on the docket is Tennessee at New Orleans. This was also another close game all the way through, neutral game script, not high scoring, with the final score being 16-15. One interesting thing I found from the Saints side of the ball, Carr was not an efficient passer last year. I believe he was 29th of 40 qualifying quarterbacks in terms of completion percentage downfield. This week, though, he threw the ball 20 plus yards 9 times, which was the most in the NFL. With the wide receivers he has on that team, and Olave and Shaheed being great downfield threats, I do think that they're going to get a little bit more aggressive with them. Carr looked sharp for the most part, completing 23 of 33 passes for 305 yards and a TD. Right now, the running game doesn't look great. Tennessee was a top-tier running defense last year and had kind of that pass funnel. But I think that Carr can be started in as a back-end QB1 moving forward, so long as Michael Thomas stays healthy. We'll see how that goes. But Thomas looked good in his return. Olave is the stud that we drafted him to be. 10 targets, 8 receptions, 112 yards. On the other side of the ball, Tannehill looked atrocious. 3 picks, threw the ball 34 times, completing 16 of them for 198 yards. It was bad.
He looked really bad
for Tannehill. And right now they got Willis as their QB2. So opening up some doors for some interesting games in the future. Hop looked good. Hop had 13 targets, 7 receptions for 65 yards. After that, though, Burks 3 targets. Not something I'm interested in. Burks honestly might be a cut candidate if he continues to see this low of volume. Right now, I'm not saying to cut him. I'm saying keep your eyes peeled. If he keeps on receiving under 5 targets, I'm not trying to have that on my roster. What do you guys think about Burks moving forward, though? Evan, I saw you shrug. You can start off.
No, I think he's still going to have good games. And especially because D Hop is getting up there too. Like he's very likely to take a couple of weeks off of this season too. And in that instance, Burks is the wide receiver one on the team, and he'll take the majority of those targets. So I think he's going to have fantasy relevance. But while D Hop's in there, it's real tough to start him. Like I'm not going to start him unless I absolutely have to. But I'm not going to get rid of him either.
Mason?
Yeah, I'm kind of getting away from anyone in Tennessee right now. I mean, if Tannehill still starts playing this bad, it's going to be between Willis and then Will Levis, and that's just going to be a whole mess of a system. Like, I'm even trying to get rid of Henry right now. I'm trying to really avoid Tennessee right now. I think it's going to turn into a quick dumpster fire if they don't get things going in the next couple weeks.
I believe in Vrabel enough to turn it around personally. I'm still not targeting Burks just because of the low passing volume and because of how bad Tannehill looked. I still believe in Derrick Henry being an RB1 this season, but it was interesting seeing Tyjae Spears outsnap him. It's 34 snaps for Spears compared to Henry having 30 snaps, but I did see that 21 of Tyjae's 34 snaps came on passing downs, where Henry had 10 snaps on 10 passing snaps of his 30. So they're still using Henry on the ground when they have him out there. It'll be interesting to see moving forward. Saints are also a good rushing defense. So moving forward, I'm waiting to see if they still decide to split it up this much when they have a positive game script. If they do, that's when I panic. That's when I'm trading Henry. Most people aren't looking this deep into where their snaps come from. Keep watching the show. We'll keep on informing you, and we'll let you know when to pull that trigger on selling Henry.
Yeah, that was the biggest surprise for me. That Spears taking that many snaps. Like I did not see that coming right away. The dude's got no ACL, so I keep that in the back of my mind. I think it's just like my vision of him is just clouded by that. But I don't know, man.
Yeah, no, it'll be something to track moving forward for sure. And then really quick note on the other side of the ball, we did see Shaheed get 6 targets, 5 receptions, 89 yards with a touchdown. He had an average depth of target of 16.5 yards. That's what we're looking for in a wide receiver 3, somebody who can make the most of a few targets. I do think that will decrease a touch when Kamara returns and they have a true passing back. And that could even take a little bit of a dip if they decide to use Kendre Miller in that form before Kamara returns from the 3-game suspension. But in that time, Shaheed's worth a start. And I would favor him as a DFS play too, if you guys are into that. I think Shaheed's a great shot in DFS.
Yeah, I honestly think Shaheed is going to be a very big boom or bust player. I mean, if you start him, don't be surprised if he gets you like 2 points. Don't be surprised if he gets you like 15 or more. There's not going to be much in my opinion.
Yeah, they even used him in the rushing game. He had just 2 carries for 11 yards, but if they catch a team sleeping on that, he can even take one of those around the corner and rip off a big gain. He's got crazy speed, and I do think that if they decide to keep on targeting wide receivers deep, then Shaheed will have value. Mm-hmm. All right. This is the last game, and then I'm gonna take a break. You guys can start chatting about some of these games.
Take a breath. You can take a breath.
Start drinking some.
Yeah.
All right. So last one of my all right. We'll take a quick break. It's brought to you by Genesee Beer. Drink that shit.
Modelo too.
Modelo. All right. We got Carolina at Atlanta. This game was close through 3 quarters. It was knotted up at 10-10. After that, Falcons ran away with the game in the 4th. Quite literally, as we know, Falcons will run the ball endlessly if they can. It is ridiculous, the splits for this team. They were one of 2 teams to run the ball more than they passed the ball last season. That trend continues with them running the ball 26 times, passing the ball 18 times. Ritter was efficient, completing 15 of those 18 passes, but only for 115 yards and 1 touchdown. Ritter only attempted 1 pass beyond 20-plus yards. He did complete that pass for 34 yards, but all of the wide receivers and tight ends are going to be incredibly limited in any game where they have hope of being in a positive game script. If they can run the ball, they will run the ball. It's basically the end of the story there. Tyler Algier is going to be an interesting player moving forward. He only had 4 less snaps than Bijan. He did end up getting 15 carries compared to Bijan's 10. Bijan was used in the passing game. He had that incredible highlight where I'm sure everyone who drafted him is like, that just proved everything I needed to see. That he is that dude. He is going to keep stepping up. They're going to give him a bigger role. But moving forward, Algier can absolutely be flexed. He's a flex starter if he continues to get this volume. Next week, he's going up against Green Bay. Both last season and in week 1, they were the 7th worst team in terms of rushing yards allowed. That's Arthur Smith's dream. He's going to be running the ball nonstop against this team. I do think that the Atlanta defense isn't formidable enough to stop the Packers consistently, especially if they get Christian Watson back. That'll be interesting to monitor. So I think it's going to be a pretty neutral game script. We'll save that for later in the show. But yeah, we had Drake London target 0 receptions. Do not overreact, but react. You shouldn't be starting Drake London moving forward unless you're desperate. He is not going to get that volume that we hoped he would, even as the wide receiver 1. And right now, again, they only targeted 1 pass beyond 20-plus yards. So it's not even like Drake London can turn his hopefully 4 or 5 targets in the future into a major play. Until we start seeing them get more confident in Ritter, I'm sitting London. It is unfortunate. I think that he's an incredible talent and would be a true wide receiver 1 for many teams. But right now, for the future, we're not starting London. Don't drop him, though. I've seen a lot of questions say, should I drop Drake London for Puka Nacua? No, add Nacua, drop somebody else. Both deserve a roster spot. Nacua is the new hotness. I get it. I love Nacua as a prospect, and he is going to eat while Kupp is out. But that being said, London's not a drop candidate. Don't overreact. Oh, and also Atlanta targeted their running backs on 52.9% of their pass attempts. That's not a number that's going to keep up. So look for them to spread the ball a little bit more to their wide receivers moving forward. All right, and then touching on the Carolina. Sorry, what?
We hope at least.
We hope. Fingers crossed, man. So yeah, really quick touching on the Carolina side of the ball. Bryce Young. Before I go off on a tangent, what do you guys think about Bryce Young in week 1?
Bad.
It's
just bad.
I didn't think it was that bad, to be honest. I got to disagree with you guys. But I'll let you guys speak your truths first.
So Bryce Young attempted 38 pass attempts, completed 20 of them for 146 yards. That is incredibly low for that much passing volume. He also only attempted 2 passes beyond 20-plus yards, completed none of them. I understand he doesn't have the personnel to work with right now. DJ Shark's still not going to be there. We got Jonathan Mingo coming into his rookie year. I think he's got a lot of talent, but that being said, he's a rookie. It's going to take time to develop. Adam Thielen's in a walker after the game. Not literally, but this man's old, bro. He's not going to put up numbers even if he does get the volume. So realistically, Young's another guy that if I can avoid starting even in super flex leagues, I'm going to avoid that until he can prove that they're going to let him pass the ball downfield. The one thing I'll say about the short area volume, Miles Sanders might benefit from this. He had 4 receptions for 26 yards, 6 targets. I think that they might continue to pass the ball to him a lot. I think that if they continue at this pace, Miles Sanders is definitely getting to that 50 targets that the coaching staff is talking about. Sanders also had 18 carries for 72 yards. Pretty average game. If he didn't have the fumble, it'd be looking much better for him. But outside of that, I am not starting. Oh, I lied. Miles Sanders and Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst, most targets on the team. There's a lot of talk in the preseason about them having a connection. It seemed to be true. Led the team in targets, had the touchdown. I do expect that it's going to continue to go this way where he'll get some volume. It's going to remain low passing yards or low receiving yards for Hurst. But I do think that if you're desperate for a tight end, he's a guy to pick up. It was a terrible week for tight ends, but he was the tight end 2 on the week, right behind Hunter Henry. So that's the tight end landscape for you in week 1.
Right.
And then a quick note here also, we had outside of Laviska Shenault on limited passing volume, Hurst had the most separation with an average of 2.7 yards, which is 0.2 minus the league average. So again, I think Evan, you put that note in there. I didn't even see that.
Yeah, it's just kind of showing that Bryce didn't really have much to work with. Bryce himself, when you're asking that question, how did he look week 1? I don't think he looked that bad. There were drives where he didn't look great, but there are also drives where he did show some confidence and some comfort, and started to make some running plays too, and started to he played some good drives. So I think that there's hope for him, and as those good drives start to outweigh the bad drives as he gets more comfortable in the game, I think that it's going to be really good for him down the stretch. He looks like a natural to me. I see a lot of natural talent for him. So, but yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Heading into the season, I thought that he was the most NFL ready QB. He has great pocket awareness. He throws the ball with anticipation. He doesn't need his wide receiver to be open before he lets it go, and he's very frequently on target with those passes. I did think he was the most NFL ready, but this was a worrisome week 1. I don't think the Falcons are a great defense, and he did not look good. He needs, just like CJ Stroud, he needs weapons. When you have just Adam Thielen, Hayden Hurst, Jonathan Mingo, and then eventually DJ Shark, it's not enough. We need at least one alpha wide receiver to get on this team. Maybe he would have put up some better numbers with DJ Moore. God knows the Bears aren't freaking using them. So we'll see how it goes moving forward, though. All right, beer break. You take over, Evan.
All right, my turn here. We're going to dive into Jacksonville and Indianapolis. Oh, my gosh. This is going to be fun.
Indiana.
This was my favorite game to watch outside of the Chargers, as it was another, shootout. The good. We're going to dive into the good here for Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence, I thought he looked great. He had 241 yards, 2 TDs, interception, also tallied 21 yards on the ground, and he's loving his new wide receiver. And speaking of that wide receiver, Calvin Ridley. He showed 2 years off. Really doesn't matter in this. I don't know how he, 2 years off normally, you would think that's a big deal, but for Calvin Ridley, it's not. And he's just got that elite level talent that can surpass that, I guess. His speed and change of direction combined with Trevor Lawrence it's going to be scary for any defense to face. I expect him to see double coverage, and I don't know if that's going to stop him. He looked great. The bad, Tank Bigsby. Yeah, Tank Bigsby. He had a biggest oopsie moment, and I think that oopsie moment might stay the biggest oopsie moment in the NFL this year for a while. I don't know if it'll be the biggest oopsie moment of the season, but it was really bad. He picked up a fumble and stood still for 3 seconds and then let the defense punch the ball out of his hands and take it in for a touchdown. That just shows lack of awareness in the game. And of course, he's a rookie, so he's got to get past some of those things. So it's kind of expected, and he did make up for it. He put up a touchdown and on one of his touchdowns, or on one of his 7 carries, but he failed to get more than 15 yards, and that's kind of that's not what you want to see, especially because he showed so much promise in the preseason too. So that was a little disappointing.
Right. Him going 7 for 13 while ETN goes 18 for 77. ETN looked like why are we doubting this guy? There's the hype around Bigsby, and I agree with the hype. I think that he's a solid running back, and I'm not going to judge him just on 1 week, but ETN still got the stranglehold on the lead role.
Yeah, he does. He really does. And he looked dominant too. He looked great doing it. I think his longest run was 27 yards. So that's a great run there. And Dan, I could have told you so. I could have said I told you so, for Higgins, but I want to save it for this. It's Christian Kirk. Only one reception for 9 yards.
I,
I
was that a Christian
remember
Kirk
having a
stand or
conversation
something?
with you. I
Did
remember
I
having
black out for a Christian Kirk stand moment? I don't know if I was on this boat.
Yeah, well, maybe not on the show. I feel like we've had a conversation, but we've also had a ton of conversations. So I just felt like calling you out for this one.
Lovely. Happy to hear that.
Yeah, I don't see much more opportunity for him. And Zay Jones is there. He got 5 targets for 5 catches, more targets than that, I think. So there's.
I will say I was surprised in that they far outsnapped Christian Kirk, and the Jaguars ran the most 12 personnel set in the NFL this past week. It was somewhere in the 30%. The stat, it slips my mind right now, but that was leading the league. And when in 12 personnel set, it was exclusively Zay Jones. So another good addition to target in your leagues, especially with the upcoming matchup against the Chiefs.
And that catch he made was phenomenal too. I don't know if you guys saw that. That was
beautiful. Yeah. I like Zay. I like Zay a lot. I do question his consistency, but there's going to be more passing volume this year as Lawrence takes another step forward. I believe in Dynasty, he's going to be a top 5 QB by the end of the year. Top 6 QB by the end of the year. Burrow and Herbert just ahead of him, and then obviously the top 3. Those aren't budging.
Yeah.
I mean, my whole opinion on the Kirk situation is I think he's obviously going to be their number 1. I think Kirk and Jones are going to kind of have that rotational situation where depending on the defense, depending on the corners that are covering them, I think that's going to be really the big factor of who's going to be that number 2 receiver of the year. So, I mean, I think there's going to be more weeks like this where Kirk will, get you 2 points. But I think he will definitely have some weeks where he's throwing up, 15-ish points, something like that. I don't think it's a good look, though, for where he was getting drafted at.
No,
absolutely. And just really quick to back up what I was talking about, Christian Kirk ran 91.3% of his routes from the slot. He looks to exclusively be a slot player moving forward. And kind of a similar vibe as I was talking about with Zay being limited when Mark Andrews comes back, being a slot wide receiver. I do think he's going to be a little bit limited by Evan Ingram, and they will take turns having their boomer bust weeks, kind of like Mason was saying there.
Yep. All right, diving into Indy. Okay, we got the good. AR looked the best out of the rookie class here. So yeah, without a doubt. 24 completions, 233 yards, 1-to-1 ratio with TD's interceptions. So you don't like to see that touch or that interception, but he did make up for it. On the ground, 10 carries, 40 yards, and another touchdown. That was great. But are you guys worried about his rushing ability hurting him? And then he already looks beat up after week 1. How long can this continue? I don't know if that's going to be something that they want to rely on him for.
Is just one shot. He got one shot. It was weird because the injury report comes out and apparently it's a knee issue. I don't understand how the knee got hit when he got shot to the upper body. I thought it was going to be a concussion or something like that. Yeah. But he's already back at practice. He's fine. He's good to go, cleared for week 2. So I'm not too worried at all about Anthony Richardson. I think he's one of those quarterbacks, kind of like Josh Allen or old Cam Newton, where he's going to be imposing pain on linebackers even. Bro's 6'4", 250, so I'm not too worried about him moving forward.
No, not at all. And another person I'm not too worried about is somebody that I traded away to you, Dan, Michael Pittman Jr. He's showing an early connection with Anthony Richardson, putting up almost 100 yards. So I think it was 97. And a touchdown. So,
real quick, Evan, we got Mason. You put this up. I like this question here. Oh, we got DeAndre Swift, Jordan Addison, and Puka Nacua. 1 flex needed. It's full PPR. We not to give any spoilers to the later part of the show, but we do have reports that Kenneth Gainwell is out.
Yeah, that he is out.
Game is tomorrow. Kenneth Gainwell is out with a rib injury. There was a quote earlier from head coach Nick Sirianni. He was saying that there's going to be weeks where Swift, and this is not the exact quote, but he's saying there's going to be weeks where Swift is that guy. We'll lean on him, and there's going to be weeks like last week. So doesn't give me much promise for Swift moving forward. But in week 2, I do think against, again, a weaker Vikings defense, I would lean that direction. The Eagles have a great defense, so Addison's going up against that great defense. We just talked about how he had the 3rd most snaps of any wide receiver on that team. And then also TJ Hawkinson coming in with a crazy high 9 targets. Jefferson's going to eat. Hawkinson's going to get some. And outside of that, I'm not incredibly confident. And then Puka Nacua, he's got the 49ers in week 2. I would have said Puka Nacua, but 49ers are going to be tough. The Rams still haven't really answered their offensive line questions. I think Stafford's going to see a ton of pressure early. Again, not to ruin any future stats, but Nacua actually operated on the outside more than the slot. He had over 70% of his routes run from the outside. And I don't know if he's going to have the time. I don't think Stafford's going to have the time in the pocket for Nakua's routes to develop. So feels weird after Swift had such a terrible week 1, but I would lean Swift on this question. Where do you guys stand?
I would do the same with Swift. I mean, Puka, rookie, he had his one great game, like you said, with the Niners. I think, Niners defensive line was terrifying last week. And I mean, that's not just me as a Niners fan. It was pretty impressive. I think they're going to feed on Stafford, get him under a lot more pressure than he was against Seattle last week. Passing game's going to struggle a lot more. I don't think it's going to be the same Rams offense we saw this week. I think, it might be a little better than we were thinking going into the season, but it's not going to continue against the Niners probably. Who knows? It is a division rivalry, and Sean McVay can pull something out against the Niners. But I think Puka needs one more week before I'm really truly confident to start him. Expect him to put up massive numbers.
I think I'm gonna lean Nacua. Honestly, I'm gonna lean Nacua. I gotta roll with the momentum that he's bringing in with him. I do know that 49 defense is tough, of course, but it's not like they're not going to throw the ball, and they really don't have that many other options. And he's going to get targets, and he's going to do something with them. It's not going to be as much as he did last week. Last week, to kind of give another hint to the question of the day, Puka Nacua was tied for 2nd with the 2nd most receptions in an NFL debut. So in NFL history. So, when you get numbers like that, I think that you could show a little bit more confidence in them the next game. I know it's a tough defense, but I think Swift it depends on the matchup too. If you're not projected to win right now and it's looking lopsided, I'd start Nacua, go for the ceiling. But if you need a little bit more reliable production, then go for Swift.
5 years in the NFL, released 16 days ago, played on 2 different teams.
2 different teams, yeah.
What the hell is the answer?
5. You guys are gonna laugh when you hear it. It's gonna be great.
Right? Okay. I know it's not gonna be a stud. I know it's gonna be a guy that we know, but we aren't thinking
he's a guy. He was in fantasy lineups. I guarantee it. He was on mine, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
At one point.
Ooh. Right. Ooh, but, random guess. There's no way it's him though. Who was that dude for the Patriots just a couple of years ago? Why can't I think of his name? Tell me if I'm already wrong. Is it the Patriots wide receiver?
I don't think.
Oh, I know who it is, I think.
You know what I'm talking about? Or
yeah. Are you thinking Mohamed Sanu?
Oh no, that'd be crazy though. He said that he was just cut 16 days ago.
Oh yeah.
Who was that dude?
No. I'll give you another hint. No, actually, no, I'm not. He didn't play for the Patriots. That's your other hint.
Okay, there we go.
All right, but we're gonna stick with Indy here. Indy, back refocusing, guys. All right, the bad. Deion Jackson, that was awful. 1.1 yards per carry, 14 yards, 13 carries. And he added, a lovely 2 fumbles on top of that. Wasn't targeted in the passing game. I don't expect him to be involved down the stretch with these numbers. And yeah, that was tough. Somebody's going to show up there. Is it Jake Funk? I don't think so. But I think it's Zach Moss and or Jonathan Taylor if he comes out. The shadows here. He could be lurking around the corner too.
Even if Cole went out, he got put on the IR, I believe, 2 days ago. So
not this week, but for the next 3 weeks, sure, undecided. But I mean, there's potential for him to come back after week 4, I believe, right?
Yeah, 5 after week 5.
After week 5. Okay.
I finally got a second to look up stats and stuff while y'all are talking. Really quick to touch on the interior defensive line. So Jason Hargrave's going to eat. He's got so his matchups against Ed Ingram and Ezra Cleveland, the 2 guards on the Vikings, both had a pass blocking grade on PFF of under 53. Under a 53 grade. They are going to tear them up. Sorry, continue.
They're going to have fun. They're going to have fun for sure. But speaking of more bad, because it's going to be bad for the Rams the next week. But Alec Pierce he had 1 reception for 5 yards. Yeah, a lot of people I think expected him in dynasty formats, so had a lot of hope too. So I think worth mentioning. So not going to be as involved as expected, or at least as I expected. I actually was trying to trade for him in the offseason. But that's all we got there. You guys got anything else to add for Indy?
I still think that later on in the season, as Anthony Richardson continues to progress, I do think that there will be some hope for Alec Pierce. I'm not trying to get him in any redraft leagues. I'm just holding on to him in dynasty leagues. Still young, still athletic. I do think that as they continue, there's going to be more RPOs. There's going to be more play action. And on those play action, especially when they get Jonathan Taylor and an actual threat for defenses to bite on that play action, that's going to open up one-on-one opportunities for Pierce down the field, especially if Pittman continues to be the proven one on that team. I think Pierce is going to get his opportunities downfield. He'll be boom or bust, but I do think that he's going to be worth a shot. And worth keeping on dynasty rosters.
Moving on to you, Mason, over here. Your turn.
All right, so we're going to be going to my boys, the Niners, against Pittsburgh. That was probably, it was a killing. Niners pretty much controlled that game from.
He's trying to contain his smile.
Yeah, it was the best. It was one of the best outputs we could have seen. But I mean, so for the Niners offense, Purdy looked very consistent, nothing about that injury to worry about. Honestly, he looked exactly how he pretty much did last year. He's going to, in my opinion, I think he's going to be that consistent guy for you all year. He's never going to be a top 12 QB for you, maybe 1 week of the season, but 2 QB league. I think he's a decent QB2, and I think he's also a good backup that you have to start on your QB1's flex week and 1 QB leagues. I believe he passed for 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, which, that's a pretty solid, reliable stat line right there to kind of go off of. Then as far as we head to the running game, McCaffrey did McCaffrey things. He took 22 carries for 152 yards. And even one of them was the 65-yard touchdown that we saw early in, first play of the third or something like that. That's something that I'm expecting to see all season from CMC. One thing that really did worry me about the Niners was Elijah Mitchell for fantasy-wise. He only took 5 carries, got 10 yards. And a big thing about Mitchell has always been his efficiency, and this is a pretty inefficient game. Looking at him being CMC's backup, we were hoping that he'd come in, maybe, get 7-8 carries, average about 5 yards a game or 5 yards a carry and, be that reliability. But, what do you guys think? Do you guys think Mitchell's really going to have any value as long as CMC's healthy, just off of what we saw week 1? Because he was not a part of the passing game either.
No, CMC's he's going to take over way too much. I don't see enough of Mitchell at all.
It's frustrating because I do think that Mitchell got a lot of run last year when both were healthy, even with Mitchell coming fresh off of an injury. I think that Mitchell has that big playability and can turn a small hole into a big game. And we know that Shanahan is an expert in creating open space. So I think Mitchell will have his boom games, but how are you going to predict that? That's going to be too hard. And until we see more volume from him, or at least a little bit more of an even split between him and McCaffrey, which isn't expected. I'm definitely not looking to roster Mitchell, even as a handcuff for McCaffrey.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also Mitchell got a lot more carries last season when they were both healthy because CMC didn't get the full offseason to go through the playbook. That's why we saw Mitchell still kind of be a little bit reliable towards the end of last season, but I think that's kind of dead now. But moving away from the running backs, we'll go to the receivers. If you pay attention to fantasy, you obviously know Ayuk went off. He had 8 catches, 129 yards, 2 TD, while Debo only caught 5 for 55. I've been saying this all offseason. Ayuk's the team's number 1 wide receiver. Debo was going 3 rounds before Ayuk. Ayuk was our number 1 receiver last year. Ayuk doesn't have an injury track, but there's a lot more pressure on Debo. We see this a lot. I think Purdy and Ayuk have that connection. We see it a lot in offseason. Even like last year, we saw that big connection between them. I think Ayuk is going to honestly evolve into a top 12 wide receiver. That could be a little bias from me, but I mean, if a couple more weeks like this, even if Purdy keeps him above 70 yards a game, I think he's got a good chance of being a reliable number 1. And I mean, they didn't throw the ball to him, so it was Ayuk and Debo combined for 13 receptions, and then McCaffrey got 3, Kittle got 3, I believe. Besides that, they didn't pass to anybody. Obviously, there will be some other people that will be worked into it, but they've got so much confidence in Ayuk and Debo that they're both. I mean, they both are going to be producers, but I mean, Ayuk's going to take over this year. I really think that. His buy price might be a little high, but if people are selling him for still a little low right now, I think it's worth pulling the move on.
Yeah, I'm happy to say that I don't have Debo in any of my leagues. His ADP was far too high for me to be taking him. And I completely agreed with you. Why draft Debo when you can get Ayuk 2-3 rounds later? And I agreed that he's going to be the wide receiver 1 there. Right now, it's going to be a bit of a crapshoot after Ayuk. I don't really know if Kittle's going to return on his value. Also, didn't draft him in any redraft leagues. He's also not fully healthy. So we'll see if that changes a little bit. Kittle had a great end of season with Purdy. But as of right now, only really starting Ayuk and McCaffrey, obviously. And then, like you said, I do think Purdy will have more QB1 weeks than just a couple. Right now, I mean, he had a great game, and they were in complete control from the jump. So if they end up going up against a little bit more of a formidable team, they end up having a more neutral game script. I'd be completely comfortable starting Brock Purdy as a QB1. Not expecting him to be the QB1 that week, but I think he's going to be kind of like a Geno of last year, where he's not going to lose you games, but he's not going to win you games.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. He's a good ground floor QB who, if you just need, if the rest of your team is golden and you just need consistency, he's your guy.
Right. I like that.
So we're on to the other side of the ball. I could say some positives about the Steelers' offense, but there honestly was none. The only positive I could really say is Allen Robinson's stock is a little up. He had a good week. I believe he had the second most receptions on the team. Yeah, he had 5 receptions for 64 yards. I mean, obviously with Deontay being out for, I think, at least 4 weeks, A-Rob should be getting a little more production. But Pickett looked terrible. I know the Niners' pressure got to him a lot. There were certain throws where even the pressure wasn't there. That I was just sitting there like, man, I can't believe I drafted Pickett in so many leagues. It didn't look good. Pickens is I'm a little down on him too. I believe he got 5 receptions, like 37 yards, or 5 receptions, 36 yards. That's a little disappointing, but we're believing looking at like 8.6 points. That's pretty bad week 1. And I honestly, if Pickett keeps playing like he did, I don't see much better than that. We even had a surprise receiver of Calvin Austin. He was the team's leading receiver, I believe, in receptions. I don't think much people were expecting that. He was kind of looked at as the wide receiver 4, even maybe consider him 5 after Pat. But Pat Fryermuth had 1 catch for 3 yards, I believe. It was the touchdown, which
Thank
gave
God it was a touchdown.
his week some value. But that whole offense, there's no one you can really rely on off of what we looked at. Jaylen Warren, I think, is going to be a good, guy to kind of keep on your bench in case Najee goes out. Pickett like throwing it to him a lot. But the running game was awful too. I don't know how much more I could say really how awful it was. There was not much good signs out of it.
They looked bad. Yeah. Love seeing that.
1 yard and a half almost. That was crazy.
Oh, yeah. It was,
yeah, right before that one drive. Oof. 1 yard. Never seen that before in a full half of football.
Never.
And honestly, a lot of the Steelers stats, like Pickett's, his low stats came off of like fourth quarter garbage drives where the Niners obviously won the game. So, defense obviously does play a little more relaxed in that kind of situation too. That's the only time he did really anything.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to switch it back to you, Evan, for the next one.
All right. We're going to Arizona and Washington. Yeah, hopefully you guys don't have too many players from this game on your roster. It was kind of ugly on both ends. With the favored Washington able to lock up the week 1 win there. We're going to start with Arizona in the good. James Conner, he really seems to be the guy yet again this year. He played great. I know. I will get into the bad later for who else could be there for this backfield. But I end up going along with the good. Michael Wilson, he played 90% of the snaps and showed some promise running routes and catching 2 passes. Like I said, there's not too much good to talk about this game, so this was tough to talk about the good side of things. So let's get to the bad. Josh Dobbs couldn't put up half of a point for fantasy, not even half of a point. He put up 0.48. Like that is so bad. I don't know.
Hey, he did better than Rodgers, so
I don't know if those numbers are worse. I don't know if the QB numbers are worse though than the running back numbers. For the backup running back, Keontae Ingram, he rushed with multiple attempts for -4 yards. And he didn't have great stats last year. My Keontae Ingram shares that I have, are very, very questionable at this point. He's probably going to be on the waiver wire soon. It's bad. Because when you got those change of pace backs and they can't do anything, what are they good for? To be honest.
Yeah.
Then we're moving on to Washington. Do you guys want to talk about Arizona a little bit more? You guys got anything else to add?
The offense was just awful. It was only such a close game because they got that strip sack, the strip sack fumble return for a touchdown right before the end of the first half. It's the only reason why Arizona scored a touchdown. I like James Conner because I think he's their only real viable. They have good receivers, but they need a QB for that. I think Conner's the only real viable weapon who's going to put up fantasy points, but I was kind of relying off touchdowns, and I don't know if he's going to even get to the red zone much to get those touchdowns. So
yeah, and I was going to bring up some good stats that he might have had, but he really didn't have that good stats. I think he was just over 3 yards a carry. It was not good on all sides really. But he just had the most value. He had the most fantasy points for the game, I think.
Yeah, I'm not starting Marquise until maybe we get Kyler back even. I do think that Zach Ertz, if you're in some weird, crazy league where there's very deep rosters and it's tight end premium, maybe he's worth an ad. Crazy, he led the NFL, or the tight ends in the NFL in targets. Turned those 10 targets into 6 receptions for 21 yards. So unless you're getting that additional tight end premium boost for catches, I'm not looking to start him at all. But and it's ridiculous that this is how the Cardinals are deciding to move forward. You can tank respectfully, and then you can do what the Cardinals are doing right now. This is so clear. It's very much looking like they're going to get that 101. So we'll see how it goes moving forward.
Right. All right. So on to Washington. Another one where there's not too much good and a little bad here too. But Brian Robinson, he looks locked in as the lead rusher this year. 19 attempts, but only 59 yards. Sam Howell, he also looks pretty good. He got a touchdown, 202 yards in the air, showed some rushing ability, getting a touchdown on the ground. So that's pretty good. I'm pretty comfortable having him as like a backup quarterback in a super flex league or something like that. But I'm probably not going to start him in a 1 QB league or really stack him at this point. The bad, let's get to the bad here. Terry McLaurin, I'm sorry if you guys drafted him, but I was not very high on him. And he only had 2 receptions, 31 yards, but only 4 targets, and that's 4th in the team. So it was very surprising to me. I didn't think he would be the 4th. I thought he might be. I do think that Johan Dobson is taking over that wide receiver room, but I didn't think he would be the 4th. Like I thought he would be 2nd, 3rd. It was really bad. So he even surprised me with how bad. I got to drop him even further in my rankings though. But Antonio Gibson played 35% of the snaps, which is not a decent share considering how
Not
much.
Nothing,
but
right.
He only tallied 9 yards, 1 reception for 10 yards. So nothing special out of that back for him. So yeah, it's a tough one there.
No, I mean, Gibson got the same amount of carries as Chris Rodriguez Jr. did. And, when you got a guy, Antonio Gibson, that you drafted him thinking how he might be the RB1, when he's splitting touches with the number 3 for the backup role, it's a little worrying. It's a little – I mean, I'm not too high. I haven't been high on Gibson in the offseason, but now I'm just even more, away from him.
Yeah, I'm not entirely off of Gibson yet. I think I just can't quit it. I got an addiction, guys, and his name's Antonio Gibson, apparently. I still think that Gibson is going to be the main pass-catching running back. Obviously, this is not a game where they really needed to rely on throwing the ball too much. And then Antonio Gibson screwed himself by fumbling the ball again. He's had consistent fumbling problems in his first 3 years in the NFL. Fumbles the ball early in the game. You got Eric Bieniemy and Ron Rivera. Ron Rivera is used to seeing it, and he doesn't want that in his lineup. Made that clear last year. Eric Bieniemy is a cutthroat coach. Like, he doesn't take any shit. So you're fumbling the ball, you're out of the game. So I really don't think that Gibson is toast. I'm still rostering him, not dropping him. But I'm waiting to see a game where they get into a negative game script to see if that pass catching value comes through.
All right, Mason, off to you again.
All right, so we're going to be going to Denver, where it's we had the Raiders and the Broncos playing off. It was a close game, but I didn't feel like either team really had an aggressive play style, so it was kind of interesting to watch. We saw Sean Payton first game as the Broncos coach, and we were hoping it would make Wilson good, but I don't even think Sean Payton can bring Wilson back to true fantasy relevance. He completed the ball 27 out of 34 times, but it was only for 177 yards, and he got 2 touchdowns, but that low of passing yards, it's not going to do it with 2 touchdowns, to really get you where you want. And his completion percentage was high, and Judy's out, who might be more. They might try moving it more down the field when he's back, but I still don't have faith in Russell Wilson. Most of the time, he might not even score 2 touchdowns. If he's passing under 200 yards and only putting up 1 TD, I'm starting to really stay away from him. Not even looking for him as my backup in 1 QB leagues anymore if he continues to play like that. And then we had Javonte Williams, though. He had a decent game. 13 carries for 52 yards, which, isn't the best fantasy-wise. Unless you had him in PPR, he did get 4 catches for only 5 yards. But the 4 points from in PPR helps. Makes it a respectable day. We still got some Samaje Perine. He got 8 carries for 41 yards, and he also had 4 receptions for 37 yards. I think those 8 carries are going to diminish more towards Javonte as the season goes on. He's recovering from injury. We've heard Peyton say that Javonte is going to be slowly worked into his workload. I'm not expecting those 4 catches as often, even though it's for 5 yards. He might get a couple dump offs because Wilson can't move the ball up the field. But Perine, I think, is still going to have some value as that running back, the passing running back for the team. I think after a couple weeks, he's not going to be carrying the ball as much. But it's a good backup hold. And I think if you're very desperate at running back position, will still be a reasonable play. No receivers really impressed me this week. It was kind of all over the place. Nobody really had a big game in Denver. I think that's partially Wilson's struggle part, and it's why I've avoided a lot of Denver receivers because I just don't think the passing volume might be there, but the yardage is not. And then another thing that really worried me was Dulcich a little bit. We had Adam Troutman being the team's leading tight end. Dulcich was projected to be a top 12 tight end this year. Obviously, tight ends, it's always a shaky position, but when you have Adam Troutman being ahead of you, it is a little worrying, I think.
Right. And now we got Dulcich out for at least this game. Troutman is interesting in deeper formats as a pickup. I'm not looking at getting him in redraft. I do think that he's on the majority of waiver wires in Dynasty. I think he's worth stashing as like your tight end 3 on your roster with hopeful upside. I don't know what the snaps were before Dulcich went out of the game, but he outsnapped him 46-21. That's pretty crazy. And if he gets let's assume that even his targets go up a touch, he's going to be a touchdown dependent volume play. But if you can continue to get 5 to 6, 7 targets around there, he's interesting in deeper dynasty formats.
Yeah, no, I definitely think in deep leagues he's worth a pickup. But for 1 week, unless you got to start him this week because Dulcich is out, then you're only taking him in a deep bench league. Not
for sure. Yeah, no redraft for sure.
Yeah. And then Evan, you got anything to say on the tight end situation?
Yeah, no, I have a crazy league that does a 2 tight ends starting, so that's the only league I would be and worth adding him in. So I'm not targeting redraft either.
That league we're in is crazy.
I love it.
It's crazy. You're seeing guys like Adam Troutman started because there's no other solution. And then on top of it, you got guys jumping on Kelsey, Andrews early, both of them out. You're screwed.
The draft is great. The draft is great. It's a nightmare.
It is interesting. Yeah, it's super flex, 2 tight end, 3 wide receivers, 2 flex. It's deep as fuck. It's crazy. It is an insane league. I fucking love it.
I love it too.
All right, but we're gonna switch to the Raiders side of the ball. Jimmy G had a pretty decent game, and I'm kind of expecting him around this, maybe a little lower than this around all year. He put up went 20 for 26, 200 yards, 2 TD. He did throw 1 interception, but still managed as QB 12. That's not normally going to happen because we had a lot of the top QBs have really poor weeks. So don't expect Jimmy to be a top 12 quarterback. On a weekly basis. He's a good. I think this kind of solidified. As long as he's healthy, he's going to be a good backup quarterback. If you need him for a week, he'll get the job done. But I was impressed by Garoppolo. As a Niner fan, I had to watch him for years. I was impressed by him.
Definitely moving forward, don't start Jimmy G without wide receiver 1 Jacoby Myers.
Yes, sir.
Ooh. Dude, he is looking sharp until a very scary injury. No jokes aside, that was very scary. See him going like full Parham with the arms out, and that was bad. Hoping he makes a quick return because he did look promising. If you are picking him up, don't start him this week. But moving forward, I do think that with Devontae Adams getting the majority of the coverage, Jacoby Myers is going to be a decent flex play.
Yeah, Jacoby does have a history of this too. He has another concussion with the same grade level of concussion as the one he just got. So.
Oh, okay.
Well, I do
didn't
gotta
know
say
that.
this, though. When we did our wide receiver rankings, I was talking good about Jacoby, and you
You
guys,
did?
you guys were not
You
for
called
it.
it. I will stand. Yep, I will give you your credit. You called that. I
Yeah.
think Jacoby Myers in Dynasty is still interesting, but moving forward right now, if the Raiders are deciding to throw the ball to their wide receivers as much as they are, they're going to be interesting. Right now,
Yeah.
there was 19 of the 26 targets going just to Jacoby and Devontae Adams. That's an insane target share. But even if it drops a little bit, that's enough to startable. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Mason. Do you feel better?
Yes, there you go.
That was a good one.
But I'm really not expecting Jacoby, even when he's fully back, to be doing this every week. I think that, Garoppolo, he's not the greatest of great quarterbacks. He had a good week. But I don't think, he's going to be that guy that's going to provide enough for Devontae and Jacoby to both be having great weeks every week. I think it's going to be a very rotational situation between them. I mean, Devontae still put up 6 catches for 66 yards, but it's not the worst. You're not crying about that or super pissed off about a 12-point game, but I think that's going to be kind of the floor for both of them is, like 10 points. And then the other one, depending on the defense, is going to be having a good game. The other one's going to have a mediocre game. That's just kind of my opinion situation.
No, yeah. I'm hearing what you're saying. Last year, Devontae was running deeper routes than he ever had before. That similar stat that I brought up, so I just found it. Derek Carr was 28th out of 36. I said 29 out of 40. Jimmy G was 33rd out of 36 qualifying quarterbacks in terms of completion percentage downfield. If they continue having Devontae Adams running deep routes, I think that's going to really hurt him with Jimmy G not being a downfield passer. Jimmy G completed 28.6% of his targets, 20 plus yards down the field. So I think this is going to be around the stat line that we see for both of these receivers, having their yards finish within a multiple of 10 of their receptions. Not going to be much deeper downfield. So.
And then we'll switch to, Josh Jacobs, who had a pretty awful week, in my opinion. He only got 19 carries for 48 yards, only averaging 2.5 per carry. He also added 2 catches for 23 yards. This isn't a huge surprise to me when, you're pretty much not there for the entire offseason. You're not working with the team, getting the plays down, all that. Although he has been there and he was in that system last year, it still does take some time to get adjusted and back into the groove of things. I'm not worried too much. If he has another really bad week, then I'm starting to get worried about Jacobs. But for all the people who took the risk on him, I wouldn't be, too worried yet. Just take the L week 1 with the bad play, bad game. Week 2 will be better.
Right, Denver's still a tough defense. Right, yeah. I think that Jacobs' targets will improve from here as well, especially with Jimmy G being the statue that he is. I don't see Jimmy G getting another 9 rushing attempts for 11 yards. Pretty crazy. Never thought that Jimmy G would see 9 rushing attempts in a game.
Never saw that on the Niners, not once.
Yeah, that was unusual. And out of those 11 yards, 8 of them came on one play. So he had 8 rushing attempts for 3 yards after that. Pretty ugly. Expecting more checkdowns for Jacobs.
Yeah. And tight ends were honestly pretty irrelevant in that game. Hooper only got 1 catch. He was the only tight end who got a catch. And that kind of signifies, some people had some hope with him, since Waller left, and we saw how much they used Waller. But obviously they used the tight end position so much because Waller was that good. Mm-hmm. So, the tight end situation they're not touching.
Yeah, I'm upset with that in Dynasty. Michael Meyer, 0 usage. Like I had high hopes for him. Yeah. Yep. He's one of those guys you just got to learn your lesson on. Don't draft rookie tight ends unless they're Sam Laporta, Luke Musgrave, or Dalton Kincaid, I guess.
All right, and then that's going to be it for the Broncos and Vegas game. So I'm going to switch it back to Evan, I believe. Yep.
Yep, to my favorite team, the Chargers at Miami. Not my favorite outcome, though. Very disappointing outcome. But if it had to end this way, at least it was in a shootout. So that's always positive to see that the offense was able to put up great numbers on both sides of the ball, I guess.
Fun game to watch.
Fun game to watch. Not a fun outcome for me. But the Chargers, let's focus on them for now. The good Chargers running game. The running game was hot. Either that or Miami run D is trash because we tallied up over 200 yards between Eck and Kelly, and both of them had equal opportunity on ground. Both of them had 16 carries. Eck just outperforming him slightly by 117 and tacking on 4 receptions for 50 yards as well. So very great showing there. He is popped up as questionable too, so I'm a little worried about that. So just keep an eye on that throughout the week. And the Keenan Herbert connection still going strong. Keenan went 6 for 76. I'm very happy with that. It's great for the consistency of the team. We need Keenan. We just need him to stay healthy, and as long as that's there, I think that the offense is going to continue to put up great numbers throughout the season. Now let's get into the bad. Josh Palmer, 1 reception for 4 yards. Quentin Johnson, 2 catches for 21 yards. So that was the worst performance out of all the first-round wide receivers, if I'm not mistaken. But it was expected, kind of. There's Mike Williams there and Keenan, so he's not expected to get great numbers this year, and especially with him, sharing the backfield or sharing that third wide receiver spot with Josh Palmer. If both of them are healthy, and Keenan and Mike Williams are healthy, I don't think you could really trust Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnson, either one of them throughout the season because they're just going to be sharing the scrapes at this point. So I'm worried about that, and I can't trust him in lineups, and I'm worried about that specifically because I have a lot of Quentin Johnson too. So, you guys got anything to add about my Chargers?
I think Quentin Johnson can improve throughout the season. Rookie, first game, you can't expect too high hopes. Obviously, some blow up, some don't in their rookie game. Still got to get used to the play style of the NFL. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are both. One of them's going to get injured. Sorry to tell you this, Evan. One of them will get injured at some point this year. And Johnston will have some true wide receiver value on that team. I think even if they keep the 3, he's going to be maybe a flex option for you where you're hoping for a touchdown from him in fantasy. But Dynasty, I love Quentin Johnston in Dynasty. Redraft, just kind of see how the Chargers situation goes going forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that Keenan Allen seems like what they were talking about in the preseason with him taking on the CD Lamb role in Kellen Moore's offense is seeming to be true. I think that he's going to be a stud this year. I'm glad that I grabbed him in all of the leagues that I could. But yeah, like you said, Mason, Mike Williams is going to get injured at some point. QJ is going to have his opportunities. Williams already even had the concussion earlier. That you can't predict, but QJ is going to get the option.
Can one of y'all at least knock on some wood for me? There we go.
I love the Chargers offense. I really hope they all stay healthy. Like you said, it's a little bit scary with Eckler being questionable with an ankle injury this early on. If he does miss these, we got Joshua Kelly. I think that even without Eckler getting injured, he is absolutely a must-add this week. He matched Eckler's 16 rushing attempts, 91 yards and a touchdown for Kelly. I think that Kelly's going to basically take the Zeke role. And Eckler's going to have the Pollard role, but with more volume than Pollard had in those offenses. So I'm looking for this carry count to stay pretty evenly split, and Kelly to potentially get some of those short yardage, maybe eventually work into goal line work. It is nice having Eckler at the goal line, though, because he is big enough, he's quick enough, but he also has the pass catching ability. So it keeps defenses guessing when you have that limited space around the red zone and especially around that 5 zone area. But regardless, this offense is good enough to support 2 running backs. And I think that even if they're not in a crazy shootout like this, you can still get some flex appeal from Kelly.
I have also a question for you guys on their running back situation. I believe Eckler and Kelly are both free agents after the season.
Correct.
So, I mean, obviously one of them will probably go. Who do you see out of those two even possibly staying? I mean, I think Eckler will want too much to stay. So, like, what do you guys kind of see that back room looking like next year? Even?
You know, I kind of see them answering the backfield in the draft, to be honest with you. And I think that that's going to be something because I expect them to do that this year, but they're waiting out and contract makes sense to wait it out. They're going to grab an absolute stud, somebody that they could just throw in, not develop into like a next year thing. So that's at least what I hope is going to happen as a Chargers fan, but I don't know. What do you think?
I agree. I think they're going to bring somebody else in. There's a number of guys that aren't true studs that are going to be free agents next year. We talked about Antonio Gibson. I think that he could be like the poor man's version of Austin Eckler in that system, where he's a little bit later of a drafted guy. Obviously, Eckler was undrafted, but we got Gibson with the pass catching ability. He is big enough to get the goal line work. I could see them bringing in a guy like that and having a lot of success. There's also like A.J. Dillon, who I'm not a huge fan of in terms of just taking over in NFL running back room, even in the future after his contract's up. But again, another guy that they could bring in probably for not a ton of money and have some success with in that type of offense.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of see. I mean, in my opinion, if Kelly, continues to produce like this, it's going to really depend on how much he's demanding. I just feel like if he's not asking for too much, they might.
Because that could be like a, stable guy that they could lean on in case the rookie fails or anything like that, or to ease the rookie in, whatever it is. Too, I think that's if anybody stays, that's the most feasible option. I think.
I mean,
let's not forget that. I mean, he hasn't showed anything in the NFL yet, but Isaiah Spiller still will have 2 years left on his contract starting next season. I believe he's still either 21 or freshly 22 years old. Yeah. So he's still got a lot of learning to do. I liked him as a prospect last year. I believe I had him as my RB4. I still don't truly believe in him enough to say that he's going to be.
He should have shown more. If he really had that hit factor, we would have seen it by now.
Right, and we haven't seen it in game because they haven't given him any opportunity really. But they must be seeing something in practices where they're like, even with the draft capital they gave him, not worth the shot.
My honest thing about Eckler though, in Dynasty, you're looking at he's not going to be on the Chargers next year. So, like, I think if you have Eckler this year, and you're not in a competing situation, you trade him because there's going to be the question of uncertainty where he goes next season. Yeah. If he goes anywhere, because running backs have zero power right now. Yeah. Well, enough of the Chargers. Let's get to the winning side of 11.
Not beating on my guys. All right. So on to Miami. The good Tua threw for 466 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he only threw 1 interception. So he looked so accurate, and he's never looked more comfortable in the offense, in my opinion. I don't know if that's just because Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack couldn't do absolutely anything to stop them or get through to anything and provide any pressure. But that might be a reason. Hill was also a very good part of the offense. And he's proven to continue to be a nightmare for the Chargers. He has officially played the Chargers 13 times and scored 13 touchdowns. So that is fun.
Whoa.
And the Chargers he went for 11 receptions, 215 yards this time. If you had this stack to a hill, which I personally have, and that was the only light part of this game, it was like 70 points depending on your format. So that's it's hard to beat that stack. That's a great stack to have, and you could have easily gotten it since Tua fell pretty far in the draft this year. Waddle and Hill both had an average of 19.5 yards per reception. So those are great numbers too. Waddle showing promise again in his year 2, 78 yards on 4 targets. The bad run game was basically non-existent, 65 yards between all RBs. Mostert leading the pack with the 37 yards and a touchdown. Right now, I'm not trusting anybody in Miami backfield. And considering A-Chain is about to bring even more question marks to that backfield, absolutely not. I mean, unless he takes over and becomes dominant, and then he's the guy. But outside of that scenario, can't trust anybody else. What do you guys think?
It was interesting because I loved Mostert as a start this week. The Chargers defense was abysmal against the run last year. They allowed, let's see here, I almost got it pulled up. Yeah, they were 27th in the league, allowing 144 yards on the ground. Miami, even though they are definitely a pass-heavy offense, they still mixed in a decent amount of run plays last season. I wasn't expecting a 45 pass attempts compared to just 20 rushing attempts, and 5 of those rushing attempts came from Tua. So really just the 15 there from the running backs. And you know what? 2 of them came from a wide receiver on an end around. So really just 13 rushing attempts from running backs. That's pretty ugly. If Mostert didn't get the touchdown, he would have looked pretty ugly in week 1. I really thought with A-Chain being a healthy scratch, Jeff Wilson being injured, I was looking at Mostert to get around 15 touches, hopefully break one of those off with that speed for a massive gain. Didn't seem to be the case in week 1. We'll see how it goes moving forward before they get Wilson back. But I do think that Wilson is a sneaky ad. I think you might be able to wait for him one more week. But if you have an open IR slot, get Jeff Wilson, put him in there. It's not going to hurt you at all. You know, he's going to come back. He's going to at least split the pass, the rushing work, and he has a pass catching back as well. So
you got to drop somebody to get him. You got to drop somebody to get him. So it hurts a little bit.
Hurts a little bit, but I think people can make it work. Drop the worst guy on your team, put Wilson in your IR, see if you can get him back on your team, or maybe go for a different guy. We've mentioned plenty of players, and we might possibly have an upcoming preview show. Looks like we're running hella long on this one. No way we can
bring the preview show into a short. That's what I was thinking.
We're gonna have to try to get another a preview show out before the week starts. I'm hoping we can do that on Saturday or something, fit it into the schedule. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, my honest opinion on the Miami backfield is don't touch it right now. A month ago I would have said A-Chain's their guy. A couple weeks ago I would have said Mostert's 100% the guy. Now I'm like, I have no idea who's the guy once people are healthy.
Is there a guy?
Yeah, is there a guy?
I don't think so. I'm staying away.
I think that team looks like it's going to be a passing offense. So, like, when Jeff Wilson's back, I would say he'd probably be the most reliable choice just because he's got that passing aspect. But I still wouldn't even trust that. I mean, if you start any A-Chain when he's actually getting some touches and playing Wilson when he's healthy or Mostert, you're relying off TD every single week for them. And if they don't get it, I don't think it's worth the start. I think, you keep them, maybe Mostert and Wilson on the bench right now in redraft, or at least when Wilson's healthy. And, if your RBs go down, throw them in. If you're desperate for an RB that week, then yeah. But any other situation, avoid that backfield at all costs. Just it's already a mess. It's gonna be a mess the rest of the season.
Yep. On to Philly.
So it was actually a pretty good game. I don't know if you guys watched that game. Pretty interesting game, to be honest.
Yeah.
But Hurts had a very underwhelming week 1. But most other top drafted quarterbacks did. So, as I've said throughout this, nothing to sweat about. New England's defense, Bill Belichick is just a he pulls things out sometimes. He's always there to surprise people, have good defensive games, have close games against the best teams. I still don't think it's, I don't think Hurts is anything to worry about by any means. But I mean, same goes with like Brown and Devontae Smith, even though they both did already have productive games. Hurts did not have a productive game, but I would not, if I started Brown or Devontae Smith this week, I wouldn't have been super upset. And so for them, their volumes should improve, as when Hurts actually passes above 200 yards, because I think he was at like 170. Yeah. But then Kenneth Gainwell seems to be the leading RB there. He's looking like he's going to be out this week, though. So
For sure out. Yep.
Yeah, and I mean DeAndre Swift got 1 carry for 3 yards, and then I think he got like 1 catch for 0 yards.
Yep.
Or something like
Correct.
that. I've been really high on Swift. I'm very worried. Like we've talked about, I think Dan said this earlier, how Sirianni said something about some weeks he's going to be that guy, some weeks he's not. This week really proved that if you put in Swift in there, do not be upset if he puts up a point like he did week 1, but also don't be surprised if he puts up 15 points, 20 points for you. That's
right.
Kind of,
With Gainwell out, it's going to be interesting to see how they divide it up. They have Rashad Penny as a healthy scratch, which was surprising to me. They decided to go with just Gainwell, Scott, and Swift. And like you said, Swift got 1 carry, Scott got 1 carry, Gainwell got 14. So it seems like those preseason rumors of Gainwell being the guy in that backfield seems to be true. If you have him in Dynasty, congratulations. You got a steal. If this guy is
Gainwell for
young,
years.
yeah, he's young, he's good. He's still got 4 targets, which I mean, I'm not fact checking it right now, but I'd be surprised if Sanders got more than 4 targets in more than about 3-4 games last season. They don't pass to their running back. They were last in the league in terms of passing percentage to their running back. So I was surprised to see this much of Gainwell dominating the backfield. But as soon as he gets back, I'm not worried about this rib injury long term. Gainwell looks like a steal both in redraft and dynasty this year.
The only thing is, though, if the window's open now. So if a guy does come in and outproduce what he was able to do week 1, that's saying something too. And maybe they won't trust him with that many. Maybe they'll trust that whoever it is with more carries down the stretch as well, taking more away from Gainwell. So window's open.
If Swift comes in and balls out, how do you not give him all the touches? In week 3?
Exactly. So there's definitely risk with Gainwell right now.
By the time he comes back. Yeah, I don't think that Swift, even if he comes in and truly has an elite game, which he very well could against the a bad Vikings defense, I really don't think that Swift is then going to come in when Gainwell is healthy and Gainwell is no longer even an option. I think at most they end up splitting carries, which would be the worst case scenario. I love seeing that Gainwell was getting dominating the carries and the touches here. If any one running back ends up getting the majority of the touches on this offense, they're going to be fantasy gold. But if it ends up being 8 carries for this guy, 10 carries for that guy, another 4 for Boston Scott, it's going to be unpredictable, and then you're not going to want to start any of them.
Yeah, no, it might be a mess this season there. Depending on, Gainwell's already hurt. Penny is the most injury-prone running back we've ever seen, and Swift is injury-prone too. So, who knows about that? So switching to the other side of the ball, Mac Jones is back. Patricia is gone.
Goddard too, right?
Goddard put up 0. He didn't get a single catch. Which he did this. I think I had him in my main league last year. I think he did this once all last year. It's obviously a very big shot to the heart when you draft a tight end early and they put up like that. But tight ends just have inconsistent weeks. Hurts had a rough week. As when Hurts has a good week, Goddard is going to get, or should be getting around what we're projecting him to.
What was crazy about this though is that I saw somewhere. I've been trying to fact check it. I can't fact check it yet, but I heard he ran the most routes of any tight end.
Oh, I didn't
really?
That's
That is nuts.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a good sign. I mean, if he's running routes, it's going to.
I think that's a good sign for his future. I just think that I don't. It just doesn't make any sense to what happened week 1. I have no idea. Makes zero sense.
Belichick said covered to Goddard, I guess, or something. Yeah, but yeah.
So Goddard was 9th in routes run. He was 14 under Dalton Schultz, that surprised me. Just seeing that there, that is ugly. That Dalton Schultz got 2 receptions after running 49 routes. But yeah, 35 routes is still insane for him to get 1 target and no receptions, especially after they didn't really show that they could move the ball that well in that game. You would think they would switch up the game plan a little bit and try something new somewhere along the line. Like you said, though, Mace, I'm not worried about Goddard long term.
Yeah.
He's going to have his games. It might be a little bit unpredictable, but like you said again, that is the tight end position. We had Hunter Henry and Hayden Hurst leading the pack this week. So, we'll see how it goes. He'll have his boom weeks.
Yeah, I mean, tight end's just so inconsistent. Like Pat Fryer with 1 catch. Like
right.
George Kittle 3 catches. George Kittle will have his 10 catch weeks for 100 yards, but he'll also have his 1 catch 12-yard weeks.
Yeah, and then Zach Ertz. Like, what is happening?
Yeah, no, just a real funky position. So don't feel too worried about drafting Goddard yet. If he does this again next week, start panicking. But
right.
But yeah, to switch to the other side of the ball, like I was saying, Mac Jones. Thank God Patricia's gone. Mac Jones had a day. He had a day. I mean,
oh man.
316 passing yards and three touchdowns. Also added 15 rushing yards, and he only had 1 INT. One INT with those passing stats. I'll take that any day.
Right, especially against that defense.
Oh yeah, I mean they're playing a tough defense. They showed great things. Dynasty. This beat me up for him a lot. It's me a lot more thing. He's going to be the guy.
They showed a willingness to throw the ball downfield, which I loved seeing. And then, so in comparison, we had the 49ers and the Steelers. And then we had this game. Both of them got to an early deficit. And then we saw the 49ers just go, hey, we got the passing or the pass rushers to mess Pickett's day up. And then on the opposite side of the ball, Mac Jones is a freaking statue. Only got sacked 2 times. 54 pass attempts, only 2 sacks, only 1 interception against the top 3 defense in the league, probably top 2 defense in the league. That I agree with you fully. That gave me a lot of more hope for Mac Jones moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, I'd still say redraft, give it a couple weeks before,
of course,
it up because it is Bill Belichick. It is the Patriots.
They are unpredictable, but I did mention him as a 1-week streamer in the waiver video. You guys can check it out, but they're playing Miami next week. Don't start him after that because he's got San Francisco in week 3. Gonna be a lot more problems for him there. But if the Patriots if they play anything like they did last week and they get out to an early deficit against a strong Miami defense that can absolutely put up points against against the Patriots defense, I do think that Mac Jones will have another week where he's throwing over 40 attempts. And right now, even though the wide receiver room is looking questionable with who's the lead guy, he's spreading the ball out well. He's throwing it accurately, and they're taking shots downfield. So he can be a 1-week streamer, or more specifically, for those who are not so bold, maybe a cheap DFS play at quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. There's going to be some down and up. But for the next quarterback game, we're going to go to Ramondre Stevenson, who had 12 touches for 25 yards.
Salvaged the day through the air.
He had a slow week, but he had a slow week, but he did come off he was sick going throughout the week. He had a slow week, but I spaced. He had 12 carries for 25 yards, slow week. He was sick. That's something that hard to come back. He was questionable even coming into the game. So obviously, he was pretty sick. And then he made up for it with 6 catches for 66 yards. That's why you were drafting Ramondre. You weren't drafting him for the running production. You were drafting him morely for the receiving production. And I think he proved that receiving production is still going to be there. I think he's going to be, 10 points is his floor. I don't think Stevenson should really go below that all year. I think, I think
touching on your point, especially with Zeke getting the 7 targets for 5 receptions and only 14 yards, where Ramondre caught all 6 of his targets for 64 yards. I think he's quickly going to prove as the more capable pass catching back. I don't think that they're going to rely on Zeke in those types of situations, and they'll quickly realize that. But Zeke still is going to be a good short yardage back. Evan, in your weird, crazy league with all of those roster settings, you also added 1 point per rushing first down, which again, I love all these weird, crazy things. This is going to benefit the freaks like us, where we can go in and take advantage of these guys. Like guys like Derrick Henry. Okay, you're worried about him not receiving the 80 receptions that McCaffrey's going to get. Guess what? He's going to get 110 first downs in that league. So I love those types of leagues. Zeke's good for those types of leagues in regular fantasy, not the guy to own. Yeah, not the guy to own.
Hey, Evan, you tried saying something. You're on mute.
I was gonna hit him in the chat.
It wasn't important. It wasn't important.
No, but yeah. So speaking on Zeke, I mean, he had interesting day. 7 carries, 29 yards, 5 catches, 14 yards. The 5 catches kind of saved his day in PPR leagues if you did start him, but I wouldn't say saved the day, because he did add in a fumble, which is big surprise. Zeke fumbled the ball. But honestly, I mean, Dan said Zeke's going to be good for those, like, the first down leagues and stuff like that, where you get the first down bonus. But I think in standard, stay away from Zeke. I think sure. If he has a couple more fumbles, Bill might not like that and might tell him to see the bench.
I would love that for all of my Ramondre teams. I got about 3 of them, and they're all Ramondre team named based. Got Ramondre the Giant, even Stevenson. Forgot the 3rd, but we Ramondre stands here, right, Evan?
Oh gosh, I'm not standing for anybody in Bill Belichick's backfield.
What? This is a total surprise. I'm shocked, Evan.
Shocked.
Really quick, we got a quick injury update on the Darren Waller. Says that the hamstring injury he's nursing is the same right hamstring that landed him on IR. It's currently a slightly different injury according to this report, but it more so has to do with the nerve that is behind it, and it's not really muscular tissue. Not a doctor. Doesn't sound great, Bob. That sounds terrible. Everyone is so hyped on Waller, so of course he has to get injured like 4 days before the regular season starts or whatever it was. So quick breaking news segment.
Yeah, no, I mean, an injury that sounds like it's kind of been one that's lingering for almost a year now. That's not good.
And it's his nerves.
Yeah.
What? That's not good.
Yeah. But, so back to the New England talk. We'll go to the receiver rooms. Kendrick Bourne continues to have, 1 or 2 weeks where he just shocks the entire fantasy world, where you're saying, why is he not rostered? Is Kendrick Bourne going to do this again? Maybe one more game. But if you start him next week, I guarantee you he'll give you 2 points. So please don't fall on the Kendrick Bourne hype. He does this every year. Do not do this.
I gotta disagree. He ran by far the most routes. He ran 54 routes on the day. That was the most of their wide receiver core. Juju ran 27 routes. I don't know if that report about his knee blowing up anytime soon was true, but if he's running half the amount of routes that Kendrick Bourne is, I'll take a shot at Kendrick Bourne. I picked him up in a few leagues. I threw a $1 bid on him in most of them because I knew most people are not going to think most of it, that much of it. I do absolutely attribute this big day to 54 passing attempts. That's not going to be the regular. They're not going to go up against a run defense like the Eagles too frequently. They're not going to get down to a 16-point deficit in the first quarter. But I do still think that if he ends up as the wide receiver 1 for the Patriots, I think that he's a solid option. He's a better set. Devontae Parker is incredibly bad at separating. Mac Jones isn't that guy that's going to say, all right, I just believe in this guy enough to throw up contested catch to Devontae Parker a ton. Juju Smith doesn't have any burst anymore. He's not even running routes. So really right now it's like Hunter Henry, Kendrick Bourne, and Ramondre Stevenson. So I'll take the shot on Kendrick Bourne. Don't spend up on him. But if he's hanging around at the back end of your roster, I am willing to drop, let's see, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, just for off the top of the head. Some of the deeper guys in these leagues. I was talking about it earlier. I would drop Treylon Burks for Kendrick Bourne. It feels crazy to say. I do think Treylon Burks is clearly the better athlete and the better wide receiver. I would rather have the wide receiver 1 on a low passing volume that's still going to be higher than the Titans than the wide receiver 2 on the Titans, especially with Tannehill looking as ugly as he did and the backups being Malik Willis and Will Levis. I don't believe in them as backups. I have more faith even in Bailey Zappi, not Matt Corral, but I have more faith in Bailey Zappi as a backup and Mac Jones over Ryan Tannehill. So I would be willing to drop Treylon Burks for Kendrick Bourne, which feels crazy to say.
You don't got to do that to Matt Corral. He's been done dirty enough, man.
He hasn't done anything.
Yeah, he's been done dirty. That's what he's been done.
All right. And then, so to continue into the other New England news, Hunter Henry, we obviously noted he was tight end 1. He got 5 catches, 56 yards in touchdown. So that's a very solid week from tight end. That's what we're looking for. Nobody else really had anything. He didn't really do anything notable at all. Juju didn't do anything notable. The one receiver that really kind of stood out to me that I think actually has some impact is Demario Davis, the rookie. He got 4 catches, 40 yards. I think, obviously in Dynasty, that's something to look after. Redraft. If you're just redraft, don't listen to that. But Dynasty, I still think that Demario Davis could be someone you could be watching the next couple weeks.
I'm still avoiding him in redraft. I will. He's probably rostered already in most Dynasty leagues, but I think he's interesting. He's hyper athletic, not my typical type of wide receiver, but I do think he's worth keeping on Dynasty rosters for sure, and monitoring if he ends up running more routes than Booty, Juju. It's very possible.
I really was hoping to have this talk be about what is it? Booty rocking everywhere. I was hoping that, but he went 0 for 4 on his targets. So I get maybe Demario Douglas was the guy in the 6th round the Patriots are getting. I don't know.
Yeah, but so that's going to be it for the Philly New England game. We're going to switch it up to Green Bay Chicago. That was a big game. I think I watched like every single snap of that game because Jordan Love is from my hometown and he represented. I mean, Love had a game. Started off very slow. He got that first touchdown because Chicago went for it on 4th and 1 at their own like 35 or something like that. And so, obviously that started off, that got him on the board. The game plan was go slow for Love. Once he opened up, He finished 15 for 27, 245 passing yards, and 3 TDs. That's already a solid fantasy performance, but there was a couple times where he had the deep ball. He overshot it by like a couple of yards. And if Christian Watson is there, that ball is getting caught. Like, that's just clean as day. There was a couple passes. Watson's catching. And so, I mean, just seeing that and what Love already did, even with the limited passing volume, is just like, whoa. Love could seriously be the option, what I was hoping for it to be. And I do think that's like it's really going to be the case. I mean, as far as the running game went there, Dylan, abysmal game. Went 13 carries and 19 yards. That's below efficient. That's awful. That's not what you want. And then Aaron Jones had a decent game. Let me pull up the stat line real quick. He went 9 carries, 41 yards, and a rushing touchdown. That's already enough of a performance, in my opinion. But he added on 2 catches for 81 yards and a touchdown. That just made his performance great. He did obviously get injured. That situation's a little bit to watch over this next coming week. If he's out, Dylan might be worth a start. But with how bad Dylan did, I'm still a little worried there. As far as that receiver room went, we know it's a young receiver room. There's not much known about it. Christian Watson was obviously out. Dobbs came in a little questionable. We weren't sure if he was going to play. But Dobbs still had a good game, tallying the most receptions of 4, only 26 yards. But he got 2 touchdowns with only 26 yards. That's a little worrying, but the 2 touchdowns is making me think that he might be the number 1 red zone target for the Green Bay Packers for Jordan Love. Jordan Love and him have shown that connection already. He went off week 1 fantasy wise while being questionable, and that's an amazing sign when you're getting 2 touchdowns when you're questionable going into the game week 1. I think Dobbs stock should be up way higher than people even think it is. That team honestly might be very high powered. Luke Musgrave even had a good game. I believe he only had 3 catches, but he was like 50 yards, I believe. And even though Jaden Reed, he had 2 passes for 48 yards. That's pretty good for only 2 catches, in my opinion. What did you guys honestly think about like Love's, I wouldn't say his first start, but his first time taking over the Green Bay Packers in a very high pressure situation?
I loved it. I loved his performance. I loved what he did out there. I mean, it was shaky at first. Don't get me wrong. There was some missed passes for sure, but I loved his performance. I think even without his wide receiver 1, he had a great game, and he's got weapons. He's got more weapons than people believe. Jaden Reed had a great game. I got a lot of praise for him. Musgrave got a great game. These young guys are all with Love, and I think as a dynasty asset too. If the Green Bay Packers might have actually struck gold again, they might have done the 3-peat.
Dude, they know how to draft quarterbacks. That's all I gotta say. Like Packers,
right? It feels like there's something to this whole sitting guys for 2-3 years. I guess I still don't have a ton of faith in Love. It's just 1 game. I don't know if this is Love being solid or it's the Bears being terrible. I really don't think that this Bears secondary is too formidable. It was promising seeing that Love put up both yardage and touchdowns with Christian Watson being out. But I'm still not putting too much faith behind this. My biggest takeaway was Luke Musgrave. Luke Musgrave looked fantastic out there. He's going to continue to dominate the tight end shares. I was very happy to see him do this, and you can absolutely go acquire him in any of your redraft leagues for nothing. No one's really looking to target him quite yet. He's not a popular name, especially in your home leagues. So go out, take a shot at Luke Musgrave, especially if Christian Watson continues to miss some time. I do think that Musgrave is going to see some targets that are valuable downfield, which is not too frequent for tight ends. So worth a shot, might be able to produce even with the low target volume.
Yeah, no, I mean the down the field stuff is huge. I believe Love hit him with like a 30-yard pass or something. I don't know if it's 30, but it was a good pass for like a tight end. He didn't need the yards after carry. It's just he might be that deeper threat tight end, which that's big. You only need one or two plays, big plays from a tight end, and then they're one of the top tight ends of the week because the position's so all over the place. But yeah, no, I mean, I was really impressed by that game. I think it looked good. I mean, yeah, like you said, Bears could be just crap. Like, I mean, their offense didn't do very good either. I mean, Fields had a decent game fantasy-wise, producing 216 passing yards, a passing touchdown, 59 rushing yards, and an INT. He never really took any deep shots up the field. It seemed like a very conservative style, even when they were down, which makes me a little worried that they were playing conservative when they were down. It either means interesting coaching or Fields really doesn't have that arm like a lot of people say he doesn't. That's what got me questioning. I mean, no receivers really did anything. Like DJ Moore, if you're owning him in Dynasty, you're once again worried, only having 2 catches, 25 yards. And I mean, if Fields plays like how he does, it's going to continue to do. I feel like it's going to continue to be like this because I mean, there's Komet who got 5 catches, 54. Darnell Mooney, I believe, got 5 catches as well for like 54 yards, and he got the touchdown. But most of Fields' passes went to running backs. I think it was 3 to Khalil Herbert it was 3 to Khalil Herbert, 6 to Roshan, and 2 to Deontay Foreman. Which, as a receiver, when over half, I think it was around half of his completions are going to RBs, that's not a good sign as a receiver. But speaking of RBs, Roshan Johnson was one of the only good points of that offense that I came through the game and was kind of impressed with. He had 5 carries, 20 yards, took a nice touchdown. I think it was about like 12 yards out. It was a nice TD. Deontay Foreman really he got utilized the least, 5 carries, 16 yards. I'm not feeling confident having him too much more in redraft. Khalil Herbert got the most carries, 9 for 27 yards. His catches made his day respectable, but I think him and Roshan are going to be decent, low level, like 7-8 point floors, just because Fields is going to do a lot of dump offs, and if they're in, they're going to get the ball. But Bears offense was so hyped up this offseason, and week 1 they did not look good.
I loved seeing Roshan Johnson out there. Roshan Johnson looked really good too. I think he might even take over the lead back there. DJ Moore owners, I think they might have a reason to be worried. I've never been a DJ Moore owner until this year. For some reason, I had confidence in him, and yeah, I'm upset. But that's pretty much all I'll say about these guys.
Yeah, can someone send out what was it? Those milk jugs back in the day? DJ Moore is missing. We need help. Can someone find him for me, please?
Yes.
Someone just traded a first overall draft pick to go and get this guy, and you give him 2 freaking targets. Are you kidding me? I don't understand it. I know it was ridiculously low ADOT for Justin Fields. I know they had those 2 hopeful preseason plays where they threw a screen to DJ Moore and Khalil Herbert. Guess what? It's fucking preseason. Like, let's change it up. Throw downfield a little bit more, We need something a little bit more than an ADOT of like, I don't have it in front of me, but it felt like Fields ADOT was negative in that game. So I'm looking for them to get a little bit more creative, and I am hopeful that they will do so. Last year, Fields sucked in the first 3 or 4 games of the season.
And then they said, hey, we got a problem. Let's change something up. So I think that they will adapt and end up playing a little bit more to their strengths. Both DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney are pretty solid downfield targets. So the fact that they're not using them at all downfield is infuriating. If you can't tell by my rant right now, but yeah, and even Komet, he's a pretty athletic tight end. So like I don't see why they're not targeting players downfield, especially when you're down the entire game. But hopefully that starts to change throughout the season. I'm not too far down on DJ Moore right now. I do think he's the clear wide receiver one, even though this game proves nothing towards that. But to your point earlier, Mason, I do think that Roshan's going to be the passing downs back. I think he's going to have some volume. And I do think that Khalil Herbert will have better days ahead of him. He's still a very efficient runner, one of those few guys that also averages over 5 per clip over his career. So I'm just looking for better days from this Bears offense, and I think they're going to start to get a little bit more creative after week 1.
All right. We're going to be switching it to the next game here, which was Rams in Seattle, which had a surprising score to at least most. It's not something we were expecting. I mean, Stafford honestly had a great day passing. He went 24-38 with 334 passing yards. That sounds great and all, but he didn't get a single touchdown, so his fantasy performance was a little, it wasn't where it should have been with those yards. But, I mean, that will obviously change if he can continue to produce that amount of yardage and he throws in 1 or 2 touchdowns. He's going to be a top quarterback again. But, I mean, I still think we got to see that again. Obviously, the O-line is weak, and we just got to see how that whole situation plays out. The running back room, Cam Akers probably had the worst running back performance of the week as far as efficiency-wise. Took 22 carries for only 29 yards. His day was somewhat salvaged because he got a TD. I mean, honestly, though, like with what happened with Akers last year, we had the whole situation of is he going to be traded? Are they just not playing him? This really worries me with Akers, that if he has another week or two, is he even going to get the ball? Because we had Kyren Williams, who was pretty efficient. I mean, he had 15 carries, 52 yards, which is all right. It's decent. But he scored 2 touchdowns as well. He's going to be that goal line guy. That's his play style, is that he's going to be the red zone goal line running back. So Cam Akers, is he really going to get much touchdowns? I don't know. I really don't think so, honestly. And I don't know. I could seriously see Akers being completely irrelevant in this offense in 2 weeks if he does how bad he did yesterday. And I want to know your guys' opinion on Cam Akers. Do you really see him having?
Let me tell you my opinion. I drafted Cam Akers and J.K. Dobbins on an injury dip. In a dynasty draft, I got them in the 11th and 12th round 2 years ago. I have been waiting for 2 fucking years for them to pop off. And J.K. Dobbins gets an Achilles injury in week 1, and Cam Akers is out touched by Kyren goddamn Williams. I needed to smoke a cigarette after I watched that game because I got fucked.
You did. That was bad. That was so. I was laughing at your misery, to be honest with you. It was I just to let you know, it wasn't all for naught, because people did get some rejoicing out of it, myself included.
I'm happy that you enjoyed that, Evan. I'm glad you watched me getting bent over by Cam Akers and plowed, because that sucked. That sucked so hard. I got Nick Chubb.
Hey, you still won. You still won. So don't complain.
I won, but fuck, dude. I've been waiting 2 years for this. I got Chubb, Montgomery, J.K. Dobbins, and Cam Akers. I was like, I'm looking good this year. I got some depth. I got some young guys on my team. And, no matter what, NFL finds a way to get you good.
Not every time, though.
Cam Akers, I would like some lube next time, please, before you come up my butthole. So, thank you.
Hey, I had to wait 2 years for Calvin Ridley. It paid out for me.
Oh, good for you. I'm really happy for you. I was cheering for you all along this way. I'm so happy for you.
Too funny.
All right, but more on the Rams. I mean, if you've been paying attention, obviously you know Puka blew up. He is the talk of fantasy right now. You know, rookie receiver. He went 10 receptions, 119 yards. You know, he didn't even need the TD to be one of the top scorers in wide receiver position. He just went off that much. Um, I'm not expecting a week 2 like that out of him because the O line's weak. Niners are going to pressure Stafford. But I mean, if Stafford continues to, and this offense continues to have that passing game, Puka is going to kill it the next 4 weeks or the next 3 weeks while Cup is out. And honestly, if he continues to do this, even when Cup comes back, I can see Puka being a reliable, you know, he'll be wide receiver 2 on that team, but being a reliable fantasy target as well. Because, I mean, even we had Puka being the number 1 guy there. We also had Tutu Atwell, who got 6 receptions for 119 yards. You know, when you got 2 receivers going over 100 yards, you're just like, obviously, Cup will dig into that share. You know, Tutu might be completely useless once Cup comes back, but Puka is, I think, has established himself as someone who in Dynasty I am trying to target so much right now because Cup is old, and he might be that wide receiver 1 for that team going forward if he can prove that he can do this week after week. And
Right.
I mean,
I would say good luck getting him in Dynasty right now. But
it's very difficult. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've been
yeah.
trying.
I saw a poll go up on Twitter today. It had over like 500 votes already, and it said, "Would you rather have Puka Nacua or a mid-round second?" Already, Puka's jumped from his like late third, early fourth dynasty rookie draft value to he far surpassed the mid-second round in that poll. It was something like 70 to 30% on that poll. So. He's going to be hard to acquire. I would wait for the worries of Cup coming back and taking away from that. But like again, this is why you're here. This is why you're watching this show. Nakua, he ran over 70% of his routes in week 1 on the outside. So he was a perimeter wide receiver. Cooper Cup has never ran less than 55% of his routes from the slot. There's a world where both of these guys coexist and do well together. And Matthew Stafford, I mean, hopefully he can last the duration of the season. Hopefully there's a contingency plan outside of just Stenson Bennett on the Rams as a quarterback. But if they're able to coexist, I think that he is going to have long-standing value. And if Stafford can stay healthy and look like himself, I think that there's a high probability that Nakua finishes it as at least a wide receiver 3 by the end of the season with wide receiver 2 upside.
And then, so that was pretty much all it for the Rams side of the ball. We're going to go to Seattle. Gino had a very disappointing start, producing a sad 112 yards and a touchdown that I believe came off their first drive of the game. Rams just shut him down. I don't know if McVay just had been drawing up, you know, studying for this game specifically. You know, we'll have to see more on how the Rams, if their offense defense is actually good. But who knows? I mean, Gino, it makes you a little worried. Was 2022 Gino a fluke year? You know, he struggled in the years before, and he had a pretty awful week 1. I mean, is he going to go back to that? Is he not? Something that, honestly, if you were kind of relying off Gino right now, kind of start watching waiver wires just in case. I mean, still give it another week or 2. But, I mean, if he does something like that, I think it's time to kind of, you know, shift away from Gino. I'm glad I traded him out in as many dynasty leagues as I could. But, yeah, I mean, still giving it a couple weeks because that offense is high-powered. You know, he's got the weapons around him. One of the best receiving rooms in the league, in my opinion. So, you know, there's still some upside there, but very worrying week 1 for him. And then we'll go to the running back room. Hard to tell, you know, how that running back room is going to go. They were down almost the entire game. You know, it didn't work towards Walker or Charbonnet. I mean, you could say Charbonnet could have even got some passing work, but I don't believe he got a single catch. I don't even know if he got a target to him, which is a little worrying because he was supposed to be that third down receiving back, and he only got 3 carries for 11 yards, while meanwhile Walker got, I believe, 12 carries for 64 yards. which is pretty efficient. And then Walker also added on 4 catches for 3 yards, which Walker getting 4 catches is not going to happen. Like, I mean, it was only for 3 yards. Don't expect that on a normal basis. Walker is not a receiving back. Yeah, I mean, the running back situation was just rough for them. Nothing to really see. Obviously, like it was a hard week to kind of process what's going on in that situation. As far as receivers go, there was only one Seattle receiver who got more than 20 yards, and it was DK. Who only got 3 catches for 47 yards, and his day was saved luckily by got a touchdown, which made him made it a respectable fantasy day for him. But if you started JSN or Lockett, then it was a terrible day for you. I mean, JSN got 3 catches, 13 yards. I know you said Quentin Johnston might have had the worst rookie wide receiver performance, but JSN might have. And I don't think it wasn't necessarily JSN's fault either. Lockett got 2 catches, 10 yards. That offense was just nothing like we expected it to be. Nothing to I don't think it's true panic yet, but if this happens next week, it's going to be panic if you start spending those picks on those Seattle wide receivers. And I love to see them struggle because I hate Seattle.
Oh, you do hate this team, and that makes sense too. I don't think he did worse. I think he did. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm gonna look him up right now.
Let's just remember he's 2 weeks removed from being under the scalpel. You know, like he had a wrist surgery 2 weeks ago. I really thought they were going to just run him out there as a distraction because they don't have any solid wide receiver 4 on that team. I thought that he was just going to run routes. His legs are healthy. His wrist is not. So let's get him out there as a distraction. But, you know, like you said, it was just a disappointing day from Geno in general, especially when so many people are considering this Rams defense to be depleted. And they are depleted, but they put up a decent day. JSN still, I mean, if other people are feeling this way, go try and get him in Dynasty. He's still that dude. He's still incredible. But I think we all kind of expected year 1 to go poorly for Jackson Smith and Jigba and Zach Charbonnet, just in terms. I personally have Metcalf and Lockett far ahead of them. I was willing to draft Metcalf in the back of the 3rd, early 4th. I was taking Lockett in the 6th round of all of my drafts. He exited early with a concussion. He did return, but I do think that JSN is going to struggle for the first part of the season, recovering from the wrist injury, and eventually step up towards the later part of the season.
Yeah, I disagree with you guys. I think because JSN did have a better game. He actually doubled Quentin Johnson pretty much. Quentin Johnson went 2 for 9. JSN went 5 had 5 targets, 3 receptions, 13 yards. So neither one of them had a great game, but JSN definitely had a little bit better one. And he played 59% of the snaps as opposed to 27% of the snaps with Quentin Johnson.
Yeah. Before we move on, we got a couple people asking for some trade advice. This first one, they both involving Kyren Williams. First one, he's asking either from my boy Lightning McQueen right here. It's either Sutton for Waller straight up or Sutton and Kyren for Waller and Swift. What do you guys kind of think about this situation? My opinion, I would leave it alone completely and not trade for Waller. The injury is a little worrying, especially what we just found out, that he's got some nerve damage. I don't know how much about touching that, especially Kyren's got some upside. Sutton's got some upside with Judy being injured already. What's your guys' opinion on it?
I would stay on the Waller side of this trade personally. I don't think Freiermuth is a bad tight end to roster. I am a little bit worried about the Waller injury. Of these 2 trades, if he has Sutton, I would be trading Sutton for Waller straight up rather than Sutton and Kyren for Waller and Swift. I think Kyren has more standalone value than Swift, which again feels crazy to say right now. But week 1 already proved that enough. I think if Gainwell and Swift are healthy, Gainwell leads the touches. I think Kyren showed that he's going to be a big part of this offense. One of the reasons why I liked him coming out of Notre Dame before the draft or before the combine was that he had decent pass catching ability. Cam Akers does not have that. So if you're in a PPR league, I would definitely keep Kyron. But yeah, I think Waller, even with the scare of the hamstring injury and the nerve damage, I think as soon as Jerry Judy comes back, Sutton's going to be impossible to predict when to start. And he's going to be a boomer bust wide receiver for you that you probably rarely start, whereas you'll start Waller probably every game he's healthy.
Yeah, that pretty much spot on. I think that there's pretty much no way you lose. Well, unless Waller is not, is the nerve damage, and he's going to be out for a while. But there's definitely more risk of losing the Sutton and Kyron for Waller and Swift. If Swift takes over that backfield, then that's another thing. But that's a bigger if. I think you take the consistency you got right now with Kyron, and you keep that guy on your roster and just trade out Sutton, because he's not going to be predictable, like Dan said, with Judy coming back.
All right, and then we got another one involving Kyron as well. I'm gonna let you guys start out with this one since I started out with the last one.
All right, let me take a look. Sutton and James Conner for Pickens and Kyron Williams. On this, I will take Pickens and Kyron Williams for sure. I think that the Rams offense has more upside than the Cardinals offense. So I think Kyron and James Conner aren't crazy far apart, even though I'd of course take the Conner side on this part of it. But Pickens over Sutton for sure, especially with knowing Johnson's missing at least 4 weeks. I think that Pickens has shown that I've talked a lot over the offseason about how he cannot separate, and that has stood
It
true.
doesn't matter.
But it doesn't matter. Exactly. That's what I've come to find out. I thought that maybe in his rookie season, these contested catches would fall back to a league average. He's just shown that he's bigger and stronger than these cornerbacks. So I'm willing to take the shot on Pickens over Sutton. I think that Sutton is what Pickens I think Sutton wants to be what Pickens is already. That big-bodied guy that can make contested catches downfield. And then on top of it, again, it feels a little bit crazy. 2 years ago, I couldn't imagine saying this, but Russell Wilson's he's falling off. And I think that Pickett has shown enough promise to start to improve. Obviously, rough week one going up against the Eagles, but I do think Pickett will continue to improve as a quarterback. So willing to take the shot on Pickens and Williams on this side of the trade.
For sure. Yeah, I gotta agree with you the two there too. I mean, Sutton, if you want to, it depends on what your team needs. If you need to upgrade at wide receiver, then definitely take the trade and get Pickens on your roster. But if you need to upgrade at running back, then the James Conner side for sure. Like he's significantly better. So it's just a kind of a tough, depending on what your roster needs there. I tend to lean the Sutton and Conner side though. The RBs are just so hard to find, hard to come by.
Interesting.
My opinion is if you're more wanting to take a risk, like I think Pickens and Kyrie obviously got the greater upside. Connor, I mean, I talked about this earlier. I don't know if I was drafting him a lot because I thought he would be the red zone weapon, but are Cardinals even going to reach the end zone or the red zone? That's a little questionable. Sutton, I mean, I was just kind of going against him. I mean, Judy, when he comes back, if he comes back and is healthy, he will take away from it. If Judy's not healthy, Sutton should be a good one. But I don't know. I would honestly go Pickens and Kyron. Pickens, terrible week one. I really hope he improves. I have him in more teams than any other player. So I would probably go Pickens and Kyron, in my opinion.
I like it. I like it.
All right, but back to the game reviews. I believe we only got two more. Yes, we do. It's going to be Dallas and Giants. This is going to be a quick one because that game was ugly, ugly, ugly by the Giants.
Only one side to review.
Yeah, I mean, so Giants, Daniel Jones just looked awful. I mean, Dallas's defense is great. We all know this. But how bad the Giants offense was insanely bad. I love Daniel Jones. I wish that he had a better week one after signing that contract, prove that he was worth it. But It makes it a little scary with that situation in the Giants' front office. Saquon had a very lackluster week 1. I mean, that was the biggest disappointment, I think, on the Giants side, fantasy wise. If you can buy them low, if someone's panicking how bad that offense is right now, maybe try to shoot a trade offer for Saquon. See if you can get him way less than what he's worth. It's worth a try. But yeah, really, but not a single person on the team was influential to me to give me a real fantasy impact as far as the receiving room. Like, just nobody did anything. I think the longest pass of the game was a 24-yarder to Isaiah Hodgins, and that was his only catch of the game. Just ugly all around for the receiving core. And I think the receiving core will be very inconsistent throughout the year. No one you really want to trust on. Yeah, I mean that's really it. And I know there's not a lot to comment on the Giants side because it was probably the worst offensive performance I've ever seen in my life.
It was another one of those games where they got down to a very early deficit, and then the Cowboys were like, "Hey, we got a pass rush. We know
Yeah.
you're passing the ball. We don't have to fake anything right now. We're just sending our boys," and it ended up with 7 sacks. So
Just
yeah,
especially Daniel Jones, where he could not get anything going.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
There's better weeks ahead of the Giants, of course. This is about as bad as it
This
gets.
is as low as it
Uh,
gets. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do still have faith that Daniel Jones can be like a QB 10 to 15 range by the end of the season if he stays healthy. He's got the rushing upside. Still had 13 attempts for 43 yards. It's a great baseline to add when he does have a decent passing game. But yeah, we'll wait for some of these wide receivers to develop a little bit more. I do still hope that they start to utilize Hyatt a little bit more. But yeah, it's a little bit shaky right now. I do think that even on the Cowboy side, it was a little bit disappointing outside of Pollard. But
Oh yeah.
when you have that big of a lead, that 26-0 lead at the half, what else are you gonna do? You know?
Yeah. Dak only threw the ball 24 times. I mean, he only got like 124 yards, but bad fantasy performance. But from an outside perspective, you're looking at like that's not a terrible game from Dak. He didn't need to open up the ball. He didn't need to throw it deep. So obviously, like CD Lamb was the only receiver that produced. We still don't know how Cooks is really going to fit into that offense. We'll see next week if it's a closer game. How that passing offense will really work. But yeah, no one did anything on that team but Pollard, and I mean, like there's a reason for it. They killed the entire game. Another thing I got to comment: the backup situation between Deuce and Rico. It's kind of a little, you know, uncertain. While they each carried the ball 6 times, Deuce was pretty inefficient. He only got 8 yards, while Donald got 24. They both played around a 15% snap count. So the backup role, we still don't know. A lot of uncertainty from Dallas still, where we got to wait a couple weeks to still figure them out.
Exactly. We have to wait until there's somewhat of a neutral game script to see what this is actually going to pan out to be.
I just dropped Deuce, so I'm not messing with it anymore.
Reasonable.
Did you have him in redraft?
Yeah.
Only you. Only you, man. That's crazy.
All right, and then that's going to finish it out for the Sunday night game. So let's go to Monday night. Send it back to Dan.
All right, yeah. So for this final game here, we had Josh Allen looking all kinds of awful. He ended up with 4 turnovers during the game. Buffalo jumped out to an early control in this lead, which is in this game that was to be expected when Aaron Rodgers goes down within the first 4 plays of the game, and Zach Wilson steps in. Josh Allen handed this game to him, plain and simple. Kept on turning the ball over and in big moments. A couple of them happened to be bomb passes that basically worked as a punt, but still they could have continued the drive where they obviously turned the ball over. I do think that James Cook looked promising in this game. There's a few moments where he had breakaway runs. He showed that he can go between the tackles, even though he didn't have a insane fantasy day. He did have 46 yards on the ground, another 17 through the air. 6 targets and 4 receptions. That showed a little bit more willingness to pass to the running backs than they had in the past. They also added another 4 targets between Damian Harris and Latavius Murray. I don't see them getting 4 targets most games. I do think that Cook is going to be a potential buy low candidate in redraft leagues. Uh, I live in Western New York, so that's not a thing in my leagues. Everyone's high on every Bills player,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that James Cook is a great buy low candidate. Outside of that, the receivers for the Bills, it's Stephon Diggs, and that's it. We have to wait to see any type of pecking order beyond that. There wasn't another wide receiver that had more than 4 targets. And even those 4 targets for Gabe Davis, those were like a couple of those were basically Hail Marys. Uh, really not looking great for anything beyond Stephon Diggs and hopefully James Cook to produce in the future. We do have Josh Allen taking on the Raiders in week 2. So I really do expect a big bounce back week. The sports books have them as the biggest favorite in the league this year or this week. I might have drank too many beers, boys. This has been a almost 2.5 hour podcast. I'm on like my 5th here.
Yeah.
But let's go. Let's get on to the Jets side of the ball.
This is what week 1's for.
Yeah, man. We got to go hard for week 1. You know what it is.
You
All right,
forgot a
so we
big
had
detail
these.
about Josh Allen, though, is that he's
What's
facing
up?
the. You forgot a big detail about Josh Allen is that he's facing the Madden curse. So something to watch.
Ooh,
You know,
that is
It's something
worrisome.
to watch.
It's
I don't believe
almost
in such a
undefeated, the Madden curse.
superstition that Madden curse is real.
It kind of is though. Like at this point, the track record's almost unbeaten. But yeah, on the Jets side of the ball, Brees Hall looked great. He has the straight line speed. I'm still waiting to see a little bit more of that agility, and that's what you really need to see after a guy tears his ACL is that lateral movement. But right now, when he gets the hole, he's looking really good. The Jets offensive line has been waiting to be fully healthy. They have a couple of big boys that can move on those rushing plays. They have a great defense. So I'm hopeful for Brees Hall to slowly start to take over this backfield. Um, we got 10 carries from Brees Hall for 127 yards in comparison to Dalvin Cook, who had 13 carries for 33 yards. Cook averaged under 3 yards per clip. Not great stat from him. Moving on to the wide receivers, though, we have Garrett Wilson, 5 targets, 5 catches for 34 yards and a touchdown. That touchdown was pretty. Did you guys see that?
Prettiest,
Yes.
one of the prettiest
I would
catches of the year.
imagine so.
Yeah.
That catch is everywhere right now. The dude is real. Zach Wilson is not. I am worried if they don't bring in another veteran to back him up, that he might end up as a wide receiver 2 or 3 if Zach Wilson's truly the quarterback for the rest of the season. I do hope that I think even Carson Wentz is a step up from Zach Wilson right now. Carson Wentz is not a good quarterback, but right now the Jets have invested so much into their team. They are win now, and I think that Carson Wentz truthfully is a step up from Zach Wilson. They both have turnover problems. Zach Wilson might have a brighter future, but right now, if Wilson is the leading quarterback, I am comfortable dropping Lazard. I don't need the wide receiver 2 for a Zach Wilson-led offense. I'm barely comfortable starting Garrett Wilson as a top 2 wide receiver on my roster. So, really looking to honestly, if I can, I am comfortable trading Garrett Wilson. If someone still values him at the same pedigree as you drafted him with Rodgers being the quarterback, I'm moving on already. I don't care to wait for this project. I love Garrett Wilson as a talent, but I'm not waiting around for them to be a defensive minded, run first offense with Zach Wilson leading the way. So personally, I'm sending out offers if I have Wilson on my team, seeing if I can still capitalize on some. I would be willing to trade him for guys in the 3rd round that we were taking a look at. Guys like if I can, it's going to be hard after week 1, but if I could get Calvin Ridley, Keenan Allen, I'd be happy to trade Wilson 1-for-1 for those players. What do you guys think about Garrett Wilson's value moving forward?
I am sad.
I agree. I am also
All I
sad.
gotta say, I am sad.
I'm sad. I'm not as sad though. I'm not as sad. I mean, Zach Wilson played less bad than Josh Allen.
Okay.
Yes,
Are you
Josh Allen's
are
one
you
bad.
starting? Are you
bad.
starting Zach Wilson?
I'm
Boy,
hey, don't overreact. Don't overreact. Nobody overreact over here.
don't overreact, but react. Zach Wilson ain't cutting it in super flex leagues. You can catch me anywhere else other than starting Zach Wilson.
I'll start a wide receiver at Superflex before
Yes,
Zach Wilson. To
100%.
Do you starting Zach Wilson or Josh Dobbs?
Josh Dobbs,
Zach
come
Wilson.
on. You're going to the bottom of the barrel.
He put up
You literally
0.48.
picked the other worst starting quarterback in the league. Go
Yeah,
one up. Who's the third worst? Because I'll start that guy.
I don't know.
Ryan Tannehill.
Tannehill might have.
Yeah, I think that's valid. I think, especially after week 1, that's a valid point, and I would start Tannehill over Wilson for sure.
Every week for the rest of the season?
Yes, if both of them are guaranteed starters for the rest of the season, I will start Ryan Tannehill over.
No matter the matchup.
I mean,
Yeah.
You're throwing so many variables on it. Are we talking season long, or are we talking?
What I'm saying is there's going to be weeks probably where I bet Zach Wilson beats Ryan Tannehill.
Okay, yeah. So if Zach Wilson is playing the Cardinals and Ryan Tannehill is playing the Niners, I will start Zach Wilson. I'm not unreasonable.
Who knows who's out there? We could be talking to Tim out there who's got like literally no quarterbacks in a dynasty league. So you never know who's out there struggling and it might need.
And I'm talking to that guy and saying, pick up Ryan Tannehill over Zach Wilson for season long. I'm just not saying every single week, no matter what the individual's matchup is.
The price is so high for them.
I don't, bro.
If you're in the QB league,
This boy over here, Evan Gooden, he traded for Zach Wilson. He got a bunch of other players and threw Zach Wilson as just an extra guy. But now that he's on his roster, he's some type of Zach Wilson worshiper. I don't understand it. Why are you defending this man?
it's called the opener prayer.
Okay,
I don't get it. Man.
I just watched the beat the Bills, so that was kind of cool.
We went on. We were texting during that game. You were like, Zach Wilson led to a win against the Buffalo Bills, and I go, okay,
hey, don't overreact.
Go ahead, stand by Zach Wilson, but I will hold you to it the entire season. So now on air, make your stance. Zach Wilson, do you think he can be even a top, we'll say 18, so a top half of QB2s if he starts the rest of the year?
He can be a top 30 quarterback. That's the real question.
Do I think that that's in the realm of possibilities? Yes. But do I think that's a likely outcome? No.
I'm happy to hear it. I'll hold you to that because I agree with you, man. It's not happening. Zach Wilson can get the fuck out of here.
I mean, to say it's not happening does that. I didn't say that. I did say it's in the realm. I didn't say it's not happening.
Okay, then I'll hold you to that. All right. I think that about does it.
We got to finish it off.
Yeah, we got to finish it off. I am very curious to the answer to this question. It's been
so the question of the day
for 2 hours and 42 minutes. Give me the answer, Evan. Who do we got?
For the refresher, we got who has the most receptions on their first NFL debut. He played the past 5 seasons for 2 different teams. Those teams being the Houston Texans. And
don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it. Mason, who do you think it is? You got any guesses? You said Houston Texans. We got to have a guess. 5 years. I don't keep track of Houston Texan wide receivers that moved on. It has to be a rookie, too. It's got to be a rookie that was drafted 5 years ago. Oh, God. Fuck. I give up. What is it?
You're going to say
Kiki Cootie. Kiki Cootie.
Kiki Cootie?
Kiki Cootie.
I was exactly correct in the fact that it was a guy that we will know the name of, but will never guess. There's 0 chance I had that on my radar. No chance.
Yeah, no way I was guessing him.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that stat. And you said Nakua was tied for second. Do you know who he was tied with?
There's 3 other people tied for second. I can't remember there.
Next week on Fantasy Rant. No, if you stuck around with us this long, drop a subscribe. It's been 2 hours and 43 minutes of this podcast. We went hard in the paint for y'all for week 1. We're excited for week 2. We're going to see if we can drop a preview show before this week 2 comes up. We're hoping we can get that done. And somehow we're going to hope that we can figure this out for next week. See if we can cut this down to at least 2 hours long for you guys. Make it a little digestible. Thank you for sticking around. If you have, please do subscribe to this channel. Go check us out on StadiumRant.com. There's tons of amazing articles from a bunch of different writers. And if you're invested in fantasy, please do hit us up with any questions that you want to. We have all of our tags right here. Mason, what's your tag on Twitter?
FR Beck.
FRM Beck. So we
You
got
got
the
me at
two on
Evan
the
Gooding
screen right
9.
here. What's up?
You got me at Evan Gooding 9 too.
Evan Gooding 9, and follow the volume. You know we following that volume, baby. So hit us up with any of your questions. We got you covered. Literally any question under the earth, we're gonna have an answer for. Cheers, you guys. Have a great week. Enjoy week 2 if we don't talk to you before then.
Peace.
Peace.